Everybody, this is the July 10th, 2019 morning session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, could you please call the roll?
Hardesty.
Here.
Udaley. Fritz. Fish.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. And now we're going to hear from legal counsel on some of the rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. Welcome to Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not address it, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless it's otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. And if you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down, which we've got a demonstration of it over there. Thank you. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thanks very much. And Keelan, it's my understanding the first four individuals on communication would like to come up together. Is that correct?
That's correct.
From the Foster area? Great. Come on up.
643, request of Shay Flaherty Benton to address council regarding Foster Area Business Association concerns. 644, request of Christian Smith to address council regarding Foster Area Business Association concerns. 645, request of Matthew Macetic to address council regarding Foster Area Business Association concerns. 646, request of Jillian Sevick to address council regarding Foster Area Business Association concerns.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Name for the record, 3 minutes each, please. Would you like to, you have your hands full. Why don't you go ahead and start?
They're pretty good.
They certainly are.
Okay.
Mama, play games.
No play game. Are we ready?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mayor, Commissioner Peabot, and fellow constituents. It's wonderful to see you again, Commissioner Fish. Thank you for coming out to the Winterfest this winter. On behalf of Foster Powell Business Association, our community, our family, I am here to take a minute to say thank you. My name is Jillian Sevick. This is my daughter Bayla, age 5, and Mavis, age 2. Together we make up Hammer and Jack's, a toy store with a place to play and a space to party. In August, we celebrate 3 years of business in the heart of the historic shopping district, and the current location of the revitalization project. My family and I live in Lentz and regularly travel the Foster Corridor by bike, by car, and by transit, and by foot. We are excited this spring when the sun coming out coincided with the finishing of the new Foster bike lanes. I have spent many years biking in Portland, and I have to say the wide lanes, the green boxes, and the double white lines have transformed Foster from a road I would never consider biking on to a pleasure. Do you like biking?
Yeah.
Day in and day out, families walk through my door whom a year ago would not traverse Foster, and now walk to shops, out to coffee, for groceries, or simply for fresh air. Creating a more pedestrian-friendly pace on Foster has directly correlated into making Foster feel safer and more family-friendly and more inviting. So thank you. It's funny to think how a year ago I was terrified to park out in front of my shop. Hey, look.
She's got a strong opinion.
She does. She really does. for myself and my customers pinned against our cars and being honked at while trying to retrieve wriggling children from the back seat was hardly manageable. I'm happy to report that the decrease in lanes and the adding of a turning lane has made travel by car not only easier, but created space to maneuver once parked, especially with children. Children are a major part. Yes, they're up there. A major part of the pedestrian travel in the heart of the Foster Powell. Not only do we have families residing in the area, many families, but the Arleta neighborhoods, our neighborhood K-8 school is located just a few blocks behind the shop. Before and after school, I watched children at the protected crossings, and each time I am deeply grateful for the changes PBOT has made in our road. Our community now numbers over 200 businesses, 1,600 employees, and over 3,000 residents, which is soon to be increased exponentially. As our community and commuters and public safety services adjust to the speed changes and become more aware of the secure crossings, I hope to see your continued help and support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I did want to invite you to come out to our tasting tour on the 20th of July. So if you get a chance to come see the changes yourself.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hola a todos, buenos dias. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Shea Flaherty Betin, and I'm the director of the Portland Mercado, a community economic development project of Hacienda CDC. Most Portlanders will know us as the rainbow-colored food carts on Foster in the Latinx market. Folks also know us as Portland's incubator for Latinx businesses. We support more than 60 businesses with long-term services, provide 19 affordable retail spaces for new entrepreneurs, and offer affordable commissary kitchen spaces for over 80 food entrepreneurs. We've been a part of the neighborhood and the Foster Area Business Association for over 4 years now. We are thrilled by our new streetscape on Foster, and we were honored to welcome Commissioner Udaley at the ribbon-cutting ceremony 3 weeks ago. We look forward to seeing the streetscape create more opportunity along Foster for small businesses, for POC entrepreneurs, and for the thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem we have at the Mercado. I want to thank FABA, PBOT, and the city for partnering around district events like Foster Forward, the Winterfest, the Foster Tasting Tour, and our own Taste of Latino America Festival. These partnerships not only impact our businesses and help us compete in a rapidly changing landscape, but help us expand to reach new customers and build intercultural community with Portlanders who still don't know about our Mercado. I'd also like to highlight our community's concern around business gentrification and displacement. With so much of the focus right now on housing displacement, we can't ignore how rising commercial real estate costs change the fabric of our small business landscape. Continued partnership and consideration around equitable neighborhood growth will be key to making sure Foster's renaissance as a Portland destination benefits all of our communities. Moving forward, I hope we can build on this momentum. Our new bike lanes and sidewalks are a great start, but continuing to work with businesses and our associations will be crucial for mitigating potential displacement. Please consider coming to our Foster Faves event, our tasting tour on July 20th. We'll have a Caribe festival that day. It's going to be great. And Sabor Latinoamerica on September 7th, which is a festival we put on for new entrepreneurs in our programs to get the ropes. So let's look at what comes next, be it more events or further construction that won't impact seasonal sales. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. And where can people get more information about the July 20th event?
At our website at portlandmercado.org.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, thanks again from all of us for allowing us an opportunity to come and speak to you today. And especially thanks for all of the support from our friends and allies in City Council who helped us through the years to see this project finally come to fruition. My name is Christian Smith, and I come here today as a former longtime community activist and organizer on behalf of the Streetscape and former leader of the Foster Powell Neighborhood Association. One of my legacies there was to help build collaborative partnerships between the neighborhoods and the business associations and other nonprofits by helping change perceptions of Foster Road from an asphalt barrier into more of a unifying project that we collectively focus our energies on, both as a revitalized Main Street and a centerpiece for our communities to coalesce around. So with that, after we came back to council and got our last 5 votes for the streetscape, I went back to PSU and got my master's, and as part of my graduate work, I put together a study regarding commercial affordability and gentrification. You have a condensed version of that in the packet that we handed out. And while the report focuses on Foster Road, the research and findings are really applicable citywide, I believe. So in a nutshell, the issue is that the city will go into an area and build a series of much-needed infrastructure improvements for bike and pedestrian safety, traffic calming, and general livability. And landlords will see this as an opportunity to get more rents from their properties. And locally owned, often minority-owned small businesses are either forced out, possibly, generally further out east, or have forced to exit the industry entirely. So this is an issue that's been simmering under the radar, but is emerging as a major concern among business owners and city staff and other stakeholders. However, as it stands, we do not currently have programs needed to address this. Nor do we currently have staff or budget allocations to begin the process of developing policies and tools to help the minority and small business community mitigate the gentrifying effects of commercial corridor revitalization. So I don't have a lot of time here, so I'm able to go into a lot of details of the report, but in it I put together, was able to identify a lot of potential tools and resources to use as a starting point, including technical assistance, regulatory and zoning changes, and both supply and demand side incentives and programs that would help both tenants and landlords. So my ask here is that we would try to add this issue to the priority list when we look towards policy solutions for other negative impacts of gentrification sooner rather than later. We've already lost some tenants on Foster. I understand that there's merchants along the Broadway-Weidler corridor that are already starting to panic about losing their spaces as a result of an upcoming revitalization project there, and so on. So I'm almost out of time. So anyway, if this is something that any of you would like to pursue further, or if you've got my contact info, I'd be more than happy to come and provide a more detailed presentation or breakdown of my research and findings and recommendations for next steps. And thanks again so much.
Very good. Could I get a copy of your report? I unfortunately don't have it in my, or is this
I
it
think
here?
there's a handout, yeah. There's
Got
a,
this one here?
Yeah.
It's in there. There's
Got
a
it,
condensed
okay.
version of that. So.
Excellent. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner
If I could
Daly.
just-
You bet.
First of all, I want to say, I often feel like that on Wednesday mornings, so don't feel bad. Mr. Smith, I would be very interested in working with you on commercial tenant protections. I actually woke up this morning and wrote to my policy director, Jamie Duhamel, and said, do we have any ability to require commercial landlords to give 90 days notice like we do residential? So very timely. And please connect with Jamie. And, this is a new realm of landlord-tenant law for me, so I don't know what we can and can't do yet.
Very much so. I'd love to. So who do I?
Jamie Duhamel, and she's in my office. She's not in chambers right now.
I can make that connection.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, commissioners, for accommodating me stepping in this morning. My name is Heather Hale. I am the Executive Director of Venture Portland. I am speaking on behalf of Matthew Macetic. Unfortunately, Matthew's store, Red Castle Games, was broken into early this morning, and he got called away to deal with the police and can't be here, but asked that I read his remarks. Again, speaking on behalf of Matthew Macetic, owner of Red Castle Games and past president of the Foster Area Business Association. During my tenure, Foster began a transformation, physically with the streetscape and culturally as a business association. We have had a close relationship with PBOT during the streetscape project and have worked closely to continue to improve safety for all users on our new Foster Road. Some car drivers have unfortunately rejected the new safer Foster, and we are seeing increased instances of protest driving in bike lanes and other unsafe behaviors. We ask that the Portland Police Bureau commit to 90 days of stepped-up traffic enforcement to help speed the acceptance of drivers to our new street. While our physical transformation nears completion, our values of diversity, inclusivity, and welcoming neighbors, new and old, will continue to evolve to make sure that all are welcome on Foster. After incidents of anti-immigrant racists threatening parishioners at St. Peter's and Access Covenant in Outer Southeast in early 2017, Foster banded together with the Foster Powell, Mount Scott Arleta, and Brentwood Darlington neighborhood associations, as well as the 82nd Avenue Business Association, to create a bilingual document with resources for those targeted by hate. This document also expressed our values of inclusivity.
We continue our work welcoming all members of the community with the upcoming shelter opening in the heart of our district. While many groups fought tooth and nail to prevent this shelter from coming, the Foster Area Business Association participated at every opportunity to make sure that the shelter in our neighborhood is an example for the rest of the city on what can happen when we come together to welcome our neighbors. Part of this has been managing expectations of neighbors and business owners. One of the areas of greatest concern we hear is around trash. While trying to address this concern by applying for grants, we learned that BPS has a program with resources slated for trash cans and service on Foster. We ask that deployment of these trash cans be accelerated to happen by fall to coincide with the opening of the shelter. While we know that shelter residents won't add litter to the district, it will be a powerful visual sign for anyone using Foster that the city cares and wants to keep our new street beautiful. We are ready and willing to be a strong partner and advocate with the city, but we need your help to make our partnership work. Please increase traffic enforcement for 90 days, deploy trash cans, provide an update on the shelter's community investment fund status, and continue to work with us to prevent gentrification and displacement as a result of the city's outstanding investment in our district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I just want to acknowledge, Heather, thank you for the work that you and your neighbors did with regard to the Foster shelter. Now, of course, that's going to be renamed the Laurelwood Center. This is going to actually be one of the crown jewels in the shelter system. It is going to provide space for 120 people, and it's using the navigation style model. So people have access to service in that facility, including job training, including opportunities to help connect them with whatever services they need to stay off the streets. And it could not have happened without the active participation and shaping of the proposal by people in the neighborhood. And I didn't want you to leave today without my acknowledging that really important difference. There was an article that went around the country this week talking about the resistance that traditionally progressive communities have been putting forth when it comes to sheltering people. And your neighborhood was a demonstration of how if you work collaboratively with a neighborhood, we actually all end up with something that's better, I think, than even the original design. With regard to enhanced policing, I will raise this question with the chief. I can't give you an answer here today, but I will take that up both with the chief and East Precinct as well. And as you know, I'm just enthusiastic about the interest that people in the community have around the basics of keeping the sidewalks clean and making sure that we have appropriate trash receptacles and that we have the service in place to be able to maintain those receptacles. So I'm happy to work with you and others on that.
Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
First, Heather Hale, thank you very much for helping to coordinate this. I understand that the goal is on a monthly basis to hear from a different business association. There's nothing like having this opportunity to hear from you directly. And thank you all for the work that you're doing to enhance the neighborhood. Parks has already announced, but I'll just reaffirm that we're going to make a substantial investment in Laurelwood Park, and we're going to do so to update it, and we'll be engaging the community and the visioning process. But that's a very important part of the success story of that part of Foster. So we'll be investing in an updated Laurelwood Park, and we look forward to working with you on that project. So thank you very much.
One other thing I should have mentioned, TPI, of course, is going to be managing that shelter. They have experience around the city. They will be sending the shelter manager, excuse me, the shelter manager will actually be participating in both the neighborhood associations and the business associations on a monthly basis. So you'll have ongoing opportunities for input and support shaping the program. Very good. Anything else? Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all. I especially appreciate you bringing your daughters today and having them be part of this process. I want to encourage Foster Business Association to actually partner with other business associations in the city because Foster Avenue is not the only avenue that's having issues of being able to maintain the small business environment. And I always like it better when we are working cooperatively to make the entire city better for all of us, rather than only being focused on our own neighborhood. And so I just want to put that out there and say, I think that you're doing fabulous work, but look outside the borders because, a lot of us are struggling with the exact same issues. It is hard to afford to live here, and it's very hard to afford to run a business here. And so I think collaboratively, we will come up with much better solutions if they're not just neighborhood specific. So thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Next is item 647, if you want.
Request of Injured and Pissed Off to address council regarding honest attorney and ACLU.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Injured and I swear my name is Injured and Pissed Off. And June 27th, I spoke at the Multnomah County Board meeting, and it was addressing a letter that was sent in the mail from the United States District Court Federal Juror Qualifications Questionnaire, and it was addressed to my old name, so I didn't do nothing with that. Today's meeting, as I spoke here May 8th, I had addressed that I would be talking July 3rd here, and of course, well, I'm talking here, but I wrote down wanted honest attorney Helen Keller and the ACLU. Well, in previous meetings, such as deleting names like Ed Tabor, you said that they were third parties. Well, I'm surprised that you wrote the ACLU, and the reason why I mentioned that I was going to talk about Helen Keller is I found out that she was one of the founding members of the ACLU. Well, I wonder what people think of that, hearing that a blind woman that's deaf, she's no longer living, and why the city wouldn't print even her name. And of course, I'm trying to sue the city and county and state for my 7 dog attacks. A dog had attacked my service animal 7 times in less than 6 years, and the city was well aware of all the stuff, and even dreamt up things like uninvited guest writing an article, and they apparently didn't think that my service animal was real. Mr. Wheeler, you wrote a letter addressing the Oregon laws that was totally ignored. And of course, your successor was such a fine man, smoking pot and chasing women and having all kinds of fun, that he totally ignored 2 more dog attacks. And I call that, rather than 7 accidents, I call it accidents, ASSIDENT. And that there is no such word, but I think that anybody could gather the meaning of it, especially if they'd had their hip broke and 2 fractures to their spinal cord. And I'm sure that I'll be talking to the ACLU and see what they think of my letters and notifications such as a civil conspiracy and conflict of interest that the city has. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes communication. Keelan, my understanding is Commissioner Fritz would like us to pull item 665, so as a courtesy, I'm going to pull that. Have any other items been pulled?
Yeah, we've had 2 additional items pulled,
Which-
664
664, correct? Okay.
and 653.
And 653. Very good. Please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaley,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. First time certain item, please. Item number 648.
Accept the quarterly Technology Oversight Committee report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Colleagues, the Technology Oversight Committee, as you know, provides volunteer citizen oversight on city technology projects that have a significant impact on city operations, especially projects that are either considered high risk or high cost, for the purpose of increasing accountability and transparency. This is an independent 5-member committee. It's comprised of individuals with what I would regard as very impressive technology backgrounds and expertise, and they provide both advice as well as their personal insight on projects during implementation. The TOC reports on a quarterly basis on projects under its oversight to the Chief Administrative Officer, who then, of course, forwards the report to us, the City Council. The quarterly reports provide information from each technology project's independent quality assurance consultant, along with TOC's assessment of the project status. The committee's staff coordinator, Heather Hafer, is here to present the latest quarterly report.
Hello, good morning. It's nice to see you here. As the mayor said, I'm Heather Hafer, and along with being the senior management analyst in the Office of Management and Finance, I have the distinct pleasure of overseeing the Technology Oversight Committee. And Mayor, thank you for pointing out that they have an impressive background and expertise. I've been working with boards, committees, and commissions for 17 years in local government, and TOC is by far the best, most intelligent group I have worked with. I love working with them. So as the mayor also said, TOC is made up of 5 members, 1 for each of our city council members. And today with me, we have Victoria Trapp, who represents Joanne Hardesty. And also to my left, we have Jeff Baer, the director of the Bureau of Technology Services. This past quarter, TOC oversaw 2 projects, Portland's online permitting system, or what we call a POPS, as well as the open accountable elections. This is the first time we've included this program in our quarterly update. TOC also received its quarterly Portland, Oregon website replacement project update, which we realized you haven't heard much about, and it's a fantastic program, and so we're going to tell you a little bit more about that today. But first, even though it technically happened 1 day after the reporting period, we wanted to start our update off with some really great news. POPS Development Hub project went live on July 1st. So now community members can apply for permits online. And we wanted to show you a quick video to tell you a little bit more about that. You're going to recognize a familiar face, just about a minute long.
So you have all these technology geniuses here. Let's see.
Building tools for you that'll save you a trip or two to the Bureau of Development Services downtown. Now you can skip the line and manage your online permits anytime, anywhere with a simple to use service called Development Hub PDI.
Remind me to never do one of those.
He's just freaking us out sitting next to him and watching.
How do you think I feel? How do you think I feel?
It is buffering.
Well,
It's
the technology is
embarrassing,
great.
right?
The Wi-Fi could be a little better.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah,
when
could you
our
do something about the
technology-
Wi-Fi in the building?
What's that?
I was just asking.
Keelan's gonna come.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are those 2 kids still here? They probably.
Oh, okay.
So you can see we need help, right?
Happens everywhere.
They're like getting their resumes updated as we speak.
You want to
Sign off of this.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should come back to that. It is very exciting. Maybe we can even start over from the beginning so we get that the whole experience.
I could just act it out live. I could do the
Probably could.
the live.
Yeah. Why don't you do
Improv.
that?
So that is our introduction to the POPS project, which now Jeff Baer is going to tell you a little bit more about.
Morning, Joe.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, members of City Council. Victoria and I are here to provide updates since the report only covers the April through June timeframe. We're also here to answer any questions or concerns you may have regarding any of these projects. I want to focus a little bit on POPs as it continues to trend as indicated in the report. Both the QA and TOC members are rating it in the yellow, yellow-green or yellow-green-green categories. You'll notice a slight difference in the report from the QA. This was a concern that the QA raised related to a couple of line item budgets expenses that were exceeding the baseline project projections. This is likely due to a miscoding error on our accounting system, so our project team is currently reviewing that and looking into it. This does not impact the overall budget of the project, which is why you also see the green rating for the overall for the budget as indicated. The project team is nearly complete with their second round of business testing for the Amanda 7 migration, and as Heather indicated, on July 1st, we went live with the Development Hub PDX, or Dev Hub, and during the first week it was available, 69 permits were created. And our team developed a dashboard report to track the number of permits created through this new portal, and having 69 created the first week on July 1st, so far this week, as of this morning, we added another 93 permits created through the Dev Hub. So customers are now able to apply for permits online through the new permitting website and don't need to travel down to the Development Services Center just to get their permit approved. BDS has received very positive reviews for this new feature, and over time, I'm expecting the trend to be that it's going to move over from being in person to actually on the web portal. So very good news about the POPs team delivering that on time. And overall, POPs is making very good progress to our go-live date later this year in November. So we're on progress for that. On the Portland, Oregon website replacement, one project that you may not have heard much about, but we've been actively engaged with the different bureaus and many of your staff to develop the beta site. It's live right now. It's beta.portlandoregon.gov. We're shifting to developing a migration plan, which includes identifying the various groups within the bureaus, who are the administrators, who are the content developers, and providing that built into our migration plan. So we're really looking at what are those crucial contents pieces that are going to be ported over into the new plan. We're estimating somewhere around 15 to 25% of what's currently available on portlandoregon.gov over onto the new website. And we're still on target for release of the new website sometime later this year in the fourth quarter, so we're actively engaged moving towards that. And we've got really good engagement with the bureaus over in providing that information on that project. So I'm going to turn it over to Victoria for some comments on the Open Accountable Elections project.
Jeff, before you do that,
Yep.
I just have a very basic question. What are we to make of the fact that the QA assessment for scope and liability and confidence level is yellow, and the TOC assessment is green? And how do we reconcile that?
I think you're going to see from the QA's perspective, they're much more embedded into the project team day to day and see some of the more granular impacts of the project. There's some, as we're going through testing, we're finding different issues that we're conveying back to the vendor, for example, and they're working on new releases to provide those corrections and fixes to that. So there's a little bit different level of digging deep into the project. And I don't know if, as a TOC member, maybe Victoria has a different perspective.
Yeah, I think based upon the information that we've received is that from the TOC perspective, we're not concerned that it's going to go over budget. I think from the project perspective, they're using more of their original budget than they had originally intended. But that is why the budget is what it is, because there are going to be those unforeseen things that need to be fixed in the QA cycle. So I think that is the call out there.
Mayor?
Commissioner Daley.
I don't see anything in this report about the website, so were you just mentioning that?
Yes.
Yeah, because...
It's not an official TOC project, but we wanted to
Okay.
have a quarterly update from the project team to see the status of that.
Great. I have been anxiously awaiting that for quite some time, so
Yes.
thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. Can you tell me how the community finds out about this fabulous online permitting system?
Don't we have a video?
Well, and we also
that
have a ACE communication team that I put together when I had BDS.
I know BDS has I think it's the DRAC, I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's working with the contracting community to provide, here's what's coming up for POPs release and specifically for the Dev Hub.
Because I agree with you. I think that ultimately, people being able to get permits online 24/7 when they want it, rather than coming downtown and standing in line, is a great outcome. But people have to know it exists in order for them to use it. So that's why the question. Thank you.
And I think you'll see, as I indicated, we had 69 just on the first week that we opened. We've got 93 to date, just as of this morning, just from Monday and Tuesday. So it's getting bigger.
Yeah, and if I could just mention, this is well-known out there amongst project managers as well. We've been working on this for a couple of years as a city. And
is that across the board with minority, very small contractors? I mean, the difference between what the big boys do.
I don't know the honest answer to that, but with time, I'm hoping this becomes the standard. And from our perspective, one of the ways that it really helps is it clearly lays out the steps for development, the steps to get the permit. And a lot of the problem that we've had previously in terms of getting permits out the door on a timely basis has just been people don't know what to bring. And then they come in and they don't have the completed documents, then they have to leave, then they have to come back. And this will help people tee everything up in a timely way. So I think it's a win for the city. It's certainly a win for those who are trying to put projects on the ground. And a good step forward, and everybody should be proud of the great work.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, open and accountable elections. What I'd like to do first is highlight a few of the major accomplishments the project has accomplished in the last quarter. One of those is that
There you go.
the new QA consultant has been on board and providing the TOC with updates on a monthly basis and working very closely with the project team to make sure that they're staying true to the milestones and the project plan that they have. Additionally, there's been an advanced data science and fraud detection component that was completed. And I call this out because many other cities that have this sort of system don't actually have that cybersecurity piece in place, and it's critically important for the validity of the data. And then also, the project team has brought on 2 additional engineering consultants to ensure that they're still driving toward that September 1st deadline and getting as much done as they can so that they can get to that Plan A, which is everything is up and working on September 1. That said, we do have a few milestones coming up. One of those things is the risk management plan. So if Plan A, and that is 100% of everything is up and operating, is not possible since we're about 45 days out from go live now, what does it look like for Plan B, and making sure that those contingency plans are documented. So if there's manual work required, if we need additional resources, that in fact those are in place and they're up and running and ready to go. And that is something that the QA consultant is also working with the project team on, and something that the TOC has asked about as well. The user acceptance testing is continuing and will continue through the go live, as well as the front-end completion is coming up. And there are 5 modules that are still all in play and still being worked on in various stages, in addition to with Civic Software Foundation and the overall project team there. As you can see on the scorecard, our risk and major concern is around the expected completion, and that is really centered on the project timeline for Plan A, and that's 100% of everything. I think that from the TOC perspective, we would see that change if in fact we have a documented plan about what that contingency looks like. If there's manual work involved, what is that plan? When are those resources going to be in place? And for instance, are there equipment and all of those things that go along with that, that red would change. So, any questions?
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Victoria, I know that the last time we talked about the open and accountable elections, there were some concerns about the quality assurance piece. Are you feeling like you're getting all the information that you need now to be able to do the analysis that you need to do?
Most definitely. With our QA resource being added, we've gained greater clarity and visibility to where the project is and what they're still behind on. So, yeah.
And so I, because we love when you guys come and you show all the yellow and green, because it always looks like progress. But I just wanted to make sure that it was on the record that this in no way reflects that there are bad things happening with the open and accountable elections. It just says that we're under this very short timeline, and we need to
Right.
make sure that we have Plan A fully fleshed out and Plan B fully fleshed out before we go live. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
Thank
It's an
you.
accurate assessment. We are very pleased to see the progress we've seen since we talked last. And our biggest call out is just that timeline. It's very aggressive, and we knew that from the beginning.
Yes.
Jeff, let me ask you a question. In the last 24 hours, two candidates have announced that they intend to use this system. If we're not, if the TOC is not sure whether we're going to meet deadlines, then how are we confident that we're giving information to potential candidates about what the ground rules are going to be?
I believe the project team has worked on 3 different options, as Victoria mentioned, A, B, and C. I think the last option is strictly a manual process for comparing all the information with I think it's called ORSTAR from the state, to do a manual process. So it's going to be a manual process, and that's the way it's going to be if that's where we end up.
Okay, and at this point, though, because there are reds on the TOC assessment, you are preparing us for the possibility that could happen.
Correct.
Correct.
And what is the additional budget ask that would be associated with going to that contingency?
That I don't know. I think that'd be more for the project team to answer that question.
That's
But we would anticipate an additional ask, is that correct?
If there's additional labor costs, that would be more project cost added onto it. Correct.
I
Okay,
think
and-
what, sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to be clear to my colleagues, because we've been down this road a lot. Red is not good. Red on one of these charts is not good. We should not sugarcoat it. Red says there is a problem. And whether it is a problem that we've identified or it's a problem where we don't have the information to make the assessment, what I have found historically is, yellows and greens tell us we're in the swim and we're making some progress. Red says we have a problem. And at some point, the council is going to have to decide if we go to a contingency and there are additional costs, how do we fund that? What's the transition, and how does it impact the experience both of the candidates that are filing and the public, which wants to have some confidence in the system to be able to, verify that people are actually eligible for the match. So, Jeff, when's the next time you come before us?
It would be September.
So early September?
We don't have a date yet, but we can make it early September.
Well, I want to make sure that if that remains red, that the council has enough time to weigh in, to have the benefit of your report, and then we may have to pivot and start looking at whether there are additional costs associated with one of the other contingencies. So, Mayor, I would suggest we bring this earlier in September, so we have some time to discuss contingencies. If the red remains red.
If I can make another suggestion, we could also provide your office with the monthly TOC report. That'll give you a monthly indicator of how things are progressing.
That would be helpful.
I think that would be very helpful. And I just want to make sure that we have enough time as a deliberative body to act, to pivot if in fact, option A is not feasible. And then I think we're going to want to know what the delay might be, what the additional costs might be. And what I will be particularly interested in is how does it impact the experience of the candidate and the public who are watching this system very closely?
So we can provide that monthly report. I think that'll give you a good 30-day indicator as we go forward. We're at such a short timeline. I don't think waiting for the next quarterly report is going to be that helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And it is worth noting for your information that at the TOC, when we met, because we meet monthly, we met at the end of June, and we did ask for an updated report on some milestones as to where they were, and also for this contingency plan prior to waiting for us to have our July TOC meeting. So we're still waiting on that report, but the request is out there to the project team to provide that to the TOC as well.
Thank you so much. I remember when the director was here speaking in front of this body, it was very clearly addressed by Commissioner Fritz that the budget is the budget. So we would either have less money to distribute to candidates if we had to hire additional staff. And so I think it's very clear what the contingency plan is, but I would be very grateful to get the monthly report. And I know why we have the red in April, May, June, because you guys told us when you were here last time that this was the situation that you were confronting. And so I just want to make sure, on behalf of Commissioner Fritz, and she's not here, she's in England, but she's probably watching. So I want to make sure that that I present that on her behalf. We know that we have a limited budget. We are clear that they're not going to come back asking for additional resources for this round. And whatever money we have is the money we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I'll entertain a motion, colleagues.
So, second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, second from Commissioner Fish. Please call the roll, Keela.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Thank you very much for your service and your work. This is really important stuff, and we appreciate the care and thought that goes into these presentations.
Thank you so much.
Aye.
Wheeler?
It's an honor.
Aye, the report's accepted, thanks.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it, thank you for your time. Next up, please, is item number 649.
650, authorize new construction financing in an amount not to exceed $3.3 million.
No, 649, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. 649, authorize the purchase of certain real property located at 4931 to 4947 North Williams Avenue and 20 to 114 North Alberta Street for affordable housing not to exceed $6.8 million plus closing costs.
Colleagues, the city is pleased to see the land under discussion being preserved for future affordable housing, particularly in a neighborhood that's been historically impacted by displacement. I think we all understand that land is at an increasing premium in North and Northeast Portland, and this acquisition contributes to the goals of the North-Northeast neighborhood housing strategy. And importantly, it responds to the stated community priority of creating a land bank for the future before properties like this one are eventually lost to the pressures of the market. I want to personally thank the Strong family for coming to meet with me, and I commend them for their willingness to partner with us on this important project and providing what I believe is an invaluable service to the community. And this is despite a history with Portland City government that would give them every reason not to trust us. We're grateful to have had this partnership in helping to make this reality, and I want to thank you for not only the tremendous work you've done on this, but I want to thank you for being here today as well. Director Callahan, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. This is one of two items this morning that is advancing our North and Northeast neighborhood strategy. In 2015, City Council adopted the North and Northeast neighborhood housing strategy.
Shannon, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you want me to read 650 and 651 at the same time?
Not yet, Mayor. If we
Okay,
could
we'll do them
each
independently.
individually, that
Okay,
would be
very
great.
good. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no problem. So the North and Northeast Neighborhood Housing Strategy is a community-driven initiative to address the impacts of the city's actions and the ongoing threat to the longtime community from displacement. The plan consists of 4 overarching goals, and this morning, the first item before us is actually related to the fourth strategy, which is land banking. And with this purchase, we'll We will actually have concluded with 3 land banking properties in the district, the first being a property on North Interstate, the second being Cary Boulevard, and then significantly this strong family property. The property itself is in the heart of the Albina Community District as well as the Humboldt neighborhood. It is located on the corner of North Williams and North Alberta. It is nearly an acre and can hold up to 150 new homes, whether they be apartments or for rent or condos for homeownership development. That is to be much later determined with a community process. But we intend to hold this property for future development. And I would really just like to thank and acknowledge the Strong family for working with us for, I think it's been almost 4 years of discussions with the Housing Bureau, active discussions in trying to make sure that this property remained a community asset and contains affordable housing for generations to come. So I appreciate the willingness to work with us and talk with us and the willingness to commit this property going forward. And with that, I would turn it over to Mark Strong, Jackie Strong, and Kathy Rhodes, members of the family that are selling the property to the Housing Bureau.
Well, we want to just say thank you for this opportunity. The property's been our family for a number of years. Prior to us purchasing the property, my grandmother, my grandfather, Opal and Luther Strong, just lived right down about a half a block from where the property is located on Williams Avenue. As kids, we used to go to Mr. Horse's store and buy penny candy and used to goof around just playing in the neighborhood and that type of thing. And so it's been an integral part of our lives for many, many years, from my uncle even back further than that. Just seeing, over the last, several years, just the change in North and Northeast Portland, has been, just kind of disheartening to watch, the fingerprints of the African American community being etched away. Has just been very, very painful. Our parents, who Kathy and I represent today, along with my uncle, just that, they're getting older and they want to do something a little bit different. But part of our dilemma was we just didn't want to put the property in the hands of developers who have no heart or no kind of concern or moral sense of justice for some of the longtime inhabitants of our community. So when we begin the conversation with the city, they've been long and it's been a while, but we feel comfortable doing this because we know that selling the property to the city is going to be beneficial for some of the residents there, for their welfare and so forth. So we're glad to be able to do that. It makes it a little bit easier to pass the title along.
Thank you, Mark. I think you said that very well. Growing up in the Northeast community has a lot of really rich memories for me. Like he mentioned, with our grandparents just living right down the street, and just the property has been a real place of family and community for us in the neighborhood. So seeing a lot of change over the years has been pretty remarkable, and that we've seen a lot of people displaced, a lot of families that we've shared the community with and shared a lot of time with, and just seeing all of that stretch out further east has been difficult for a lot of people in our community. My children, especially, they've been like right in the midst of all of this transition and are wondering what to make of it. So it creates a lot of economic issues for a lot of people. And so we are just so grateful and thankful that you're looking beyond just the economic impact of all of this displacement, that you're looking at families and you're looking at building community. And that is so important, and it makes me feel honored to be a part of, the city of Portland, that you're looking at giving back and making opportunities for those that have been displaced to be able to come back to the community they know as home. So we are grateful to be here today and grateful that you have a mindset for more than just economics, but for building community.
Commissioner Hardesty, did you have?
And I'll be brief and quick. I just want to thank a few people real quickly because when I started this process, we were really feeling like we had been gentrified. As a person that really came from a background that had nominal means, we weren't a rich or wealthy family by any means, but through hard work and determination, my father taught us the same virtuous skills that are needed for us to be able to be at this point in time. So with all my little dollars and pennies saved and accumulated together, and my brother as well, we were able to buy this property that my nieces and nephews have talked about that was right across the street from where we grew up. But along that pathway, we experienced gentrification at the highest levels, and we really were thinking that the city was our enemy versus our friend. So when we started out on this course, we were zoned at a density level that was far less than what those that surrounded us were. And us not having any experience doing this, I dived in to say, I'm going to get this zone change. And people like Nan Stark, Carl Dinkelspiel, Tanya Wolfsberger, Shannon, nieces and nephews, my wonderful wife, Eileen, we all came together and we came and we pushed, we got the zone changed. And then we went back and we negotiated a dollar amount with me with not having any experience ever having done this before. But the reason why I'm mentioning that is because it was a collaboration. And with that being the case, I think we set on the precipice of being able to come up with a model that might be able to be duplicated nationwide. Whereas instead of the city, the large municipality going in and robbing and raping and pillaging those communities that are marginalized, we joined together and came up with a model that can help not only the strong family for generations to come, but also the community of Portland. We can be that beam, that star. So I am indebted forever and forever grateful to what you are about, hopefully, to improve. And again, thank you for joining with us. And we're not done yet because, I just met with Prosper Portland. We're hoping that the building will be named after us in some way. And we're going to be actively involved in what goes in there. And we're going to be fighting, just like my mom did, Opal Strong, for the community and making sure that it's developed the right way.
Here,
Thank
here.
you.
Mayor, if I
Darcy,
may.
you bet.
I want to applaud your family. I want to applaud your family because in this time where land is being grabbed up all over the city of Portland, you could have chosen a different route. And I'm not a real estate person, but I suspect you could have also got more money if the goal was just about money. I want to applaud you because most people don't have the patience for how slow the city moves. And the fact that you are carrying on the legacy of your parents who had the foresight to purchase this property, and you've had the foresight to maintain the property, and you decided that you would only let it go if you were going to let it go so that it would be beneficial to those who have lived and made Inner Northeast a place that people want to live, and then for those who are coming in the future. So I feel a little guilty sitting back here having you thank us when in fact it is your vision that brings us to this place today. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much. And again, it just shows your wisdom because you're right. We could have put it on the open market and had a much more competitive process, but we did. And again, I'm the one and my brother were the ones that bought this property, okay? It wasn't our parents. But the point that I'm making behind that is that we came together and now the whole family is going to benefit. And that's what's important.
Mayor,
Commissioner Daly.
I want to echo Commissioner Hardesty's statement and just say or note how vital it is that we move as much property out of the private market as we can and turn it into permanently affordable housing. I mean, I think it's the only way forward to preserving any kind of racial or economic diversity in this city, so I want to applaud you as well. I want to say Opal Strong has a real nice ring to it, so I do hope that that naming takes place. And Director Callahan, I mean, I've read the report, and there's no, there's some minor soil contamination. The new zoning's already been secured, so we don't anticipate many issues with actually moving forward with this development, including with the neighborhood.
No, no, we've done complete testing throughout the sale process and are confident both in the ability to move forward on a future development, but we do intend to hold this property for a period of time. And obviously, the family is still living on the property presently, but intends to move off, I believe, very soon.
And I didn't hear it mentioned, but I'm assuming that the units, when they're eventually built, will be subject to our preference policy?
And yes, indeed.
Fantastic.
Anything under the North and Northeast Neighborhood Strategy or an interstate is.
I think it's just good to note every time we.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you again. We'll now take public testimony.
We've had 4 people sign up. I'll read the first 3 names: Curtis Faith, Jeanne Connet, and Lightning.
Thank you very much. You can go ahead and take your seats. Thank you for being here. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. Congratulations to the Strong family. And again, on the record, they have stated they would like to be able to name this property after themselves or a name they come up with. And you must stand by that on the record. Now, one of the concerns I did have is that I noticed there were some, if I'm correct, 3 homes that were currently on this site. I'm really against deconstruction and having homes demolished. Is there any way that we can come up with a different plan to possibly, if these homes could be moved to another property, whether it's a private owner or someone else within the area itself, and have a moving company move these houses? I'm just really against any deconstruction or demolition of older homes. And to me, that just kind of goes against kind of the historic value of certain properties that were built many years ago, and such as family members possibly or friends utilizing those properties. So that's a concern to me, maybe to be looked at, and if that could happen, that would be very much appreciated. Again, just on the amount of units being built there, I like everything I see. I absolutely want to see this go forward and approved. I think it's a great location to build these type of units, the multifamily and/or units that could possibly be owned in the future by the tenants themselves. And that's a real important issue to me on this type of property here, is just from my position, and I possibly the family would agree on this, is that ownership in the future is really kind of a thing that presents that gentrification and people having to move out of the areas. As a tenant, you have a certain amount of rights, but let's face it, if you can move this into ownership rights to the people acquiring and getting into these units, that to me is the best possibility in the outcome for this property, in my opinion. So again, I'm hoping that'll happen. I like the fact of any time the city is involved in these type of transactions, if we can move it not into a tenant-based type property, but ownership in the future type property. That's really the difference between the private ownership and the city owning a property, is they have the potential to move them in as owners in the future. They have that potential to do that, and that's what I want to start seeing, is our taxpayer dollars moving people into ownership of these units and having ownership, not being called a tenant at the end of the day from the city of Portland. That is really taking care of the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jeanne Cornett. I want to thank the Strong family very, very much. Eric Reich owned property out there for a really long time. I think this store that you were referring to maybe is one that he had owned. And he kept it tied up for years, so I'm hoping that his daughter Erica saw fit to sell them. Aside from that, I'm really glad to see the Northeast area come back. Dad didn't want me there, but my friends made sure that I got to go over there every once in a while. And it's a beautiful neighborhood, so I hope whatever they build in the true fashion. You go down Mississippi anywhere over there, the houses are vibrant, they're beautiful. I hope that this doesn't become another rat box building, which is all I see. Rat box. You know, even New York had more class than this. So I want to thank the Strong family very much for their endeavor in this, and I wish and pray for them all the best.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Curtis Faith. I wanted to address at a general level the lack of addressing the primary need for all of these kinds of housing activities, which is that the let's just say less favorable at the time segments of the population from the perspective of the companies and people that were running the city in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that took all of the homes and put exhibition centers on top of them and didn't compensate people on the east side for all of the homes that they had, didn't compensate the Chinese and didn't compensate the Japanese, and now all of their descendants are poor and don't have any equity and cannot find housing. And so we're papering this over with some sort of emergency resolution on a property that we are going to hold for several years. I don't see why that's an emergency resolution. I think you're using the emergenciness of it to make your paperwork easier, and you're not addressing the emergency of the fact that there wasn't even a shelter for people last night that showed up in town who didn't have a house to sleep in. Last night, you were turned away. That's the emergency the city's not addressing, and you, sir, are not anything other than a real estate developer trying to attack a problem you know nothing about because you've not spent any time in the field. I know because I've spent the last 9 months on the streets of this city preparing to talk to this city, waiting for the trial wherein your city employees would admit that they were targeting people. This trial took place yesterday.
So again, I just remind you, your
Yes, and
testimony
it
needs
is
to
relevant
stay
to
the-
this
the
particular
issue
item
at hand.
because it is an emergency resolution. I'm saying it shouldn't be.
Thank you. Any further testimony on this item, Keelan?
Maggie.
Come on up.
Okay, I also want to reference that I understand the historical nature of this accomplishment in terms of how this land has been, taken by the government for whatever purposes, roads, bureaucracies, or whatever, and then people, or gentrification and people displaced. However, I have been over on the east side, and one of the things that I did when I was over there was I walked all over the place. And what I saw were these little tiny plots of land everywhere around properties like this Alberta property, where you guys could be paying urban farmers to grow little community gardens. And it seems to me that the government really owes this particular region. When people first came here, like during World War II, to work for government contractors, and this is still going on, like with Intel, you had government contractor, and then, they hired these minorities, and then I brought one to you who's been back out on the street. She used to work for Intel. Intel says, oh yeah, we're gonna hire these people, and they do so through a contract, and then they just fire them, and then they can't pay their rent and they're homeless. And so this cycle happens over and over and over and over again. But as far as the Alberta area, why can't the Department of Agriculture get into this new thing, urban farming, and pay urban farmers? This is a new thing. You can go to Corvallis, find, an African-American dude or a Chinese dude or a Japanese dude who's doing,
Maggie, again, I'm going to have to rein you in a little
minority.
bit.
What does this have to do with the
or
item?
woman, who's been historically displaced and wants to do some urban farming on these little, there's these little plots of land everywhere, like, they're like less
Maggie,
than
are
an
you
eighth of
for
an
or
acre.
against this item?
Pardon?
Are you for or against
Well,
this item?
I'm for it, but what I'm against is traditionally what's happened is, you build interurban housing near these like big freeway arterials, and then the chain link fencing goes up. How about lots of little community gardens and no chain link fencing?
Very
Can
good.
we,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you.
Super. Thank you. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
I am absolutely excited about voting yes on this proposal. I think this is the kind of proposal that I hope gets broad media coverage so that we have more opportunities to be intentional about how we develop the little remaining land left in the city of Portland. I vote aye.
New Daily?
Pretty much already said what I have to say. Don't always agree with Mr. Lightning, but I want to agree with him right now that as well as removing land from the private market, creating home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income households is an important issue. And my office is working on a couple different strategies around that. And thank you to the Strong family for being here and for working with the city. And despite the history, I vote aye.
Fish?
Well, first, Shannon, thanks for bringing this forward, and thanks to the Strong family for sharing your history with us today. It's an honor to have you. This is a great deal. We are not going to solve our long-term affordable housing problem unless we build a lot more affordable housing. And this is a terrific location. And I'm pleased that we'll be doing the land banking now and then figuring out how to maximize the use. I'm a big believer that the name of the property should reflect the history. So I think we have a pretty good record here today that says there's going to be something about the Strong family at this location. And anyway, whenever we can celebrate a win like this for the community, it's special. And Commissioner Hardesty expects this to be on the front page of all of our media tomorrow. She's relatively new to council. The truth is the good stories usually there isn't a lot of space for the good stories because of the other stories that displace them. But this is a good story. And let's hope that we get a chance to celebrate this because we don't have a chance to celebrate the wins enough in our community. Thank you for making this day possible. I'm very proud to vote aye.
Wheeler?
I want to thank the Strong family as well. Thank you for the time you spent with me. Thank you for the time that you've spent with the Housing Bureau. And in particular, Shannon, I want to thank you and the Bureau for continuing our efforts around the North-Northeast strategy, as well as securing the preference policy as a viable option in our community. And many times people have asked about the prospect of land banking, about the prospect of making sure that we respect the history of the community. And this most certainly does not make amends for the history in North Portland, Northeast Portland, but it is a step in the right direction. It's an acknowledgement that we as a community can do better, and thanks to you and the Strong family, you're demonstrating that with a partnership, we can really do some amazing work together. And so I'm very proud to bring this on behalf of the Housing Bureau. I want to thank Andrea and Cupid from my office for the work that they've put into this as well. I want to thank my colleagues for their support. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. and into the future we go. Thank you. Next. That's all right. Item 650.
Authorize new construction financing in an amount not to exceed $3.3 million for the Kilpatrick Affordable Home Ownership Project.
Director Callahan, do you want to just come on up?
No, she's going to push this other one.
Oh, very good. Excellent. Welcome. Good
Hopefully
morning.
I have someone join. Hi, good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Dana Shepard, and I'm actually here to present this along with Steve of Habitat. All right, and are you coming along, Dr. Holt?
Here, one more chair.
Good morning.
All right, good morning, good morning. So I am going to, again, my name is Dana Shepard with the Housing Bureau. I manage the homeownership and home retention programs. And I am here to speak about strategy number 2 of the 4 overarching strategies of the Northeast Neighborhood Housing Strategy, and that is creating new homeownership. So creating homeownership in this area, the interstate urban renewal area, has presented its own set of challenges, as you all have already acknowledged. This area has experienced rising housing costs and over the last few decades. So what we are doing, this is the first Northeast homeownership development to come in front of City Council for funding approval. This project provides affordable homeownership opportunities for first-time homebuyers, giving priority to the families with historic ties to the neighborhood that have been impacted by displacement as the surrounding area has gentrified. So specifically, this is the homeowners of all 30 of these units have been identified by the Northeast Preference Policy. So this project not only provides stable housing in a high opportunity area, but offers families the ability to participate in the equity increase of their home and to create wealth for the next generation. Like I said, there are 30 units in the Kilpatrick project, and they are all townhomes, correct? And they will be family size with 15 2-bedroom units and 15 3-bedroom units. All right. So initial preference policy home buyers are targeted at much lower incomes, with 12 homes reserved for families earning between 35% and 60% area median income, 13 homes for families at 61% to 80% area median income, and 5 homes for families from the 81% to 100% area median income. The projected average income for the Kilpatrick homebuyers is about 66% area median income. That's equivalent to about $58,014 for a family of 4. The project's 30 units help us to reach our goal of creating 110 new homeowners under the Northeast Housing Strategy by 2022. Again, all of which are identified through the Northeast Preference Policy. Habitat is an experienced developer and has been providing homeownership opportunities for hardworking families, having built and sold over 400 homes in partnership with local families over the past 38 years. Approximately 90% of Habitat's existing home buyers are from communities of color, 30% identified a family member with a disability, and nearly all have children below the age of 18. Average household income has been $38,117, or 46% area median income. The total Portland Housing Bureau construction financing of $3.3 million is leveraging over $7 million in other sources of financing, including a First Republic construction loan, Habitat donations and sponsorships, and other exemptions or waivers. I'm just going to connect this a little bit with the program side of things. The Portland Housing Center has been working with households that have been identified through the first round of preference policy, and they will be assessing households for their interest in their ability to purchase one of these 30 homes. So I believe earlier in the year, Dr. Holt presented the Northeast strategy, and we talked about time. And so we're really optimistic that with working with our partners, that these households have had some time to get themselves ready and to be able to finance one of these homes. I'll pass this on.
Great, thank you, Dana. And thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for your continued commitment to creating a Portland that's affordable for all of our residents. Unfortunately, we have a long way to go. I'm Steve Messinetti. I'm the CEO of Habitat for Humanity. And according to our 2016 census data, 27% of Portland renters are now paying more than 50% of their income on rent. That's almost 1 out of every 3 households in our city that are unable to afford food, transportation, healthcare because of their high housing costs. With median income for Black families in our city at $26,000, the numbers are even worse. Today, according to the city's State of Housing report, there are no Portland neighborhoods in our city that the average Black family can afford. And not only that, but Black homeowners, Blacks own homes nearly at half the rate of their white counterparts. And even today, that ownership rate for Blacks in our city is going down. Your home shouldn't cost you your family's health. Your home shouldn't cost you your kids' education. When the cost of home is your family's future, the cost is too high. And when the cost of home is any family's future, that's something none of us can afford. So I thank the council for dedicating resources specifically toward people who have been systemically denied wealth-building opportunities for generations, and finally giving some the opportunity to buy a home and to build the strength, stability, and self-reliance that comes with homeownership. The preference policy is working. For phase 1 of this project, 8 of 12 of the households have reserved spots and are ready to buy these homes with an average income of $42,000. 6 of 8 are single parents, 7 of 8 are African American. Each has their own story of displacement and housing instability. I'm joined today actually by 3 of these home buyers. Reina Hernandez is in the back, John Robertson, and then to my left, Mr. Anthony Handy is going to share a little bit of his family's story. Turn it over to him.
So when I got introduced to the policy preference.
Can you move that a little closer,
When I got introduced to the policy preference program, it was kind of hard for me to get a mortgage. It wasn't never enough money. You had to make so much money to even afford for a single father with 2 daughters, right? And so I had to keep going. I went to Proud Brown, the African American program, and then there was another one. And everybody kept turning me down at this point. So I ended up at Habitat for Humanity. And I'm a recovery drug addict from the HRR program. I just met you about a month ago, right? And so by my credit scores and all of that stuff, wreckage from the past and stuff, the only place I could go to was Habitat for Humanity, and get some help. And so, I think I got 6 months or something left. Finna move into a condo, and it's been kind of discouraging venture, but I stayed the course. They helped me out over here. They showing me how to do finances, and it's a pretty good program, for a first-time home owner. That's been displaced. My family lived over there down by the freeway. I was born on by a Boise school from Fremont and Borthwick, And so it's nice that you guys are giving back. I've been to some of the meetings and some of the people that was from the development commission. They was telling us how they were sorry about what they did. They knew what they was doing, and they just wanted to help us. And so it's a great opportunity for me right now, as a single parent with 2 daughters I'm trying to raise on my own, for them to have a stable home for themselves, and that's all anybody ever wants, you know what I'm saying? Yes.
That's awesome. Thanks, Anthony, for being here. Appreciate it.
Steve, can I just clarify something? Because can we go back one picture? These look like condos. Is that what these are?
They are. These are. It's a little unclear in the picture, but there's actually 2 buildings. The one that's closest to the street there on the corner of Alberta and our Interstate and Kilpatrick is a 12-unit building. The top floor units is being referred to as townhomes, meaning there's upstairs bedrooms and downstairs living space, but these are stacked condo units.
So that's, okay, thank you.
And then there's an 18-unit building right next to it as well.
Thank you.
All right, would you like
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Commissioners, good to see you. Mr. Mayor, good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Dr. Stephen Holt, Chair of the Oversight Committee for the Northeast Housing Strategies, and you've seen the strategies emphasized today. I just want to say two things. One specifically related to the home ownership piece, and Steve, you used a lot of the information that I was going to say, so I won't reiterate it. I had a whole prepared document this time, but I will say that home ownership for African Americans in the city of Portland is now equaling 1965 numbers. We've gone backward. And so opportunities like this cannot be overemphasized. The more that we can do, the more aggressive we can be, the more intentional we can be, the better off we will be as a community. To quote what Commissioner Hardesty has already referred to in regard to land banking and securing property. It's just good wisdom. It's just good movement. And so I'm excited about what we've been able to do with the Strong property. I grew up right around the corner on Williams and Wygant, and know the area and the heartbeat and what that community once was, which it is no longer. So as we can be intentional and strategic and very purposeful in our forethought and our purpose, I don't think that we could do more than is presently happening. So the Oversight Committee is 100% in support. Obviously, these are the strategies we've been working at as a response to the robust community engagement we were involved in to lay these pieces out. So the only thing that I think would be more exciting is more money so that we can do more of this great work. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Dr. Holt. Appreciate it. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. I thank you so much for the presentation. It is exciting, and I hope Lightning is still back there. I can't tell, but oh, okay, good. So you know, you talked about home ownership opportunities. Here are some home ownership opportunities. I just want to correct something that Steve said, which is you said the preference policy is working. And I would respectfully disagree when you think about the amount of people who've been displaced as compared to the opportunities that we're making available. So with all due respect, it's not even close to being, good. But we are working hard towards a vision about people being able to live wherever they want to, regardless of income. And we do not want to be one of those cities where your income dictates your zip code. And we are very, very close to that today. And so I appreciate the hard work. Habitat, your reputation is really stellar. I'm looking forward to this being one of those green buildings that will be a model for how we move forward. But please don't tell anybody how well we're doing, because we have a long way to go before we can pat ourselves on the back for what we're doing.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would just say that doing well is relative.
It is relative.
And relative to what we heard from, the Northeast group last year, there's been improvements. So I do think we should celebrate that. And one of the improvements is personal to me. Before I came here, when I was a low-income, single parent, one of those people paying over 50% of my income for rent, I started a Facebook group called The Shed, and I met a young single mom in similar circumstances to me named Chelsea, who is an African-American woman whose family goes back at least 3 generations in Northeast Portland and had been displaced numerous times and was really struggling, as I was, to keep a roof over her family's head. And her first, I told her about this program, and she was really excited. She went to one of the very first, I'm glad that I have the story right, orientations. She applied and she didn't get through. And I think we realized in that moment that we hadn't accounted for the fact that the very people we wanted to bring back were facing additional challenges that we hadn't addressed through the strategy. So I am very pleased to say that she has now qualified, and she and her son will be moving into a home. And she beat me to home ownership. And I appreciate your comment about the wreckage of the past, because I don't have the same challenges as you have had, clearly, but I'm still recovering from years of being a cost burden renter and not in a position to buy, despite the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm very well compensated, and I've been paying rent on time for 30 years. You'd think I'd be able to buy a house, but not quite yet. So I just want to commend everyone, agree with Commissioner Hardesty that we have a long way to go, but I'm relieved that it's going better.
Public testimony.
We've had 5 people sign up. The first 3, Curtis Faith, Jan Conant, and Lightning.
I'm sorry, how many did you say signed up?
Good morning again, council members, mayor. I just want to say again how grateful I am to the Strong family, and I want to emphasize, can't emphasize it enough, I'm really tired of seeing rat boxes everywhere. Could you guys please add a little bit of class, a little bit of style, especially if you are going to name it after the Strong family, because that's really important. And Portland has always been known for all of our creative infrastructure as far as housing and stuff like that goes. And we're losing it, and we're losing it so fast. And I come over the bridge and I look up at the West Hills and I think, damn, Vincent Price, did you have to die so soon? In which case some of those houses wouldn't be there. We all know that. There used to be a code in Portland that you couldn't build a house that would distract the view from the West Hills where those people lived. I'm very grateful to each and every one of them, and I still wish it was active, because when I look around Portland, gray, even the windows look gray. And so I'm really concerned. And so I've heard people come up here and say the same thing and just be ignored.
I'm sorry, could we pause for time for a moment? This job involves hours of active listening in these council sessions.
apologize.
And we have a policy that says public testimony needs to be relevant to the item at hand, and you're well aware of it. So are you in support of or against this item? And either way, why? I don't need to hear your critique of architectural
I'm for any
aesthetics.
items you guys want to do, as long as you start using a little bit of class with it. And I'm not the first one to sit here and tell you guys that.
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Curtis Faith again. I had a couple comments. One is I, again, don't understand why this is an emergency resolution, although it seems that from the last time I was here 5 months ago.
But could I clarify that?
Yes.
Because it is confusing, and I concede that. It's actually, and I wish we could come up with a different way of saying it other than emergency, but that's just administratively under our rules what it is described. It's not referring to the situation. This is an administrative item. If we don't have an emergency clause, what happens is the item is moved to second reading, and then it is approved, and then we have to wait 30 days until the ordinance is actually enacted. So by putting the emergency clause on it, it's not saying it's more important than other items that don't have the emergency clause. It just means we can begin the financing right away. So it's really about a timeliness issue as opposed to the significance of the problem. That's the reference to emergency.
And that it's in the public interest for us to move faster than the 30 to 45 days it would take if it wasn't.
Exactly.
If I could also add, Mayor, we've had 2 different council meetings in the next month that were previously scheduled canceled because of lack of a quorum.
Correct.
So we're also trying to make sure that we do the people's business and not get jammed by days in the future in which we don't have council.
Right, yeah, but I concede it is confusing, so I
All
appreciate
right,
you
so
raising it.
so the terminology doesn't have anything to do with there being a specific emergency resolution for particular types of deals?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
My comment specifically relates to the ability of the public to adequately understand the information so that they could make comment that's relevant. In particular, I would just say that I am, having listened to the presentation in favor of this resolution, but I'm not equipped ahead of time to know whether I would be or not. And that's the problem I'd like to address. I think one of the ways that that could be very specifically addressed is that we should put real numbers in instead of 35 to 60% of AMI, which is a relatively complex mathematical concept because most people don't know the difference between the mean and the median. And then when you go look at the numbers in the state, they're all in different tables everywhere. It takes you half an hour to find out what could have been done on the report to begin with, which is what is the actual income levels that we're talking about here when we say 35 to 60% at this particular time. I also think it would be useful if we had a listing of the ongoing subsidy budget implications of any of these projects. If we've got subsidies going in for lower income housing people, then we ought to know, we're talking about $6.8 million right now, but we're talking about X number of dollars per year per low income subsidized person that needs to come out of some revenue somewhere, I assume, right? And then it also would be useful if we had some itemization of about some standard way of looking at these across them, so we could say, we're paying $350,000 per person, new homeowner here. Those are the kinds of numbers that matter to citizens because they're the only way we can assess whether or not this is a useful project or not. And, you know, we could come up with a limited number of these projects and say we're doing great things no matter what we do, but how is this impacting the overall number of homeless people that we need? The overall number, are we actually making progress on that chart? Or is this just, you know, sand in a box that's not going to amount to a hill of beans? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
and to
Maggie,
answer
thank you. Your time is up. Good morning.
My time is not up.
Oh, I thought you haven't already testified. I apologize. Sorry.
okay.
That was a little abrupt, but you
okay,
got on
so,
your point. Go for it.
So the AMI, 30 to 65% right now for the gentleman in the green is $85,000 is the AMI. So if you can do the math on the 30 to 65% of that, you'll have your answer for that question. Okay, so my comment is furthering what the gentleman in the green just said about the total amount of money for affordable housing, the total amount of money being spent for shelters, the total amount of money being spent for permanent supportive housing. I can tell you right now, the shelters are inhumane. I'm in a TPI shelter on the
Maggie,
east
this
side.
has nothing to do with the matter before us.
I get it.
You
I
for
get
it or
it.
against it?
We're talking about people being over 60, over 65, sleeping on the sidewalks in the rain with no sleeping bag. This is the kind of population we're talking about. When you say affordable housing, you're talking about housing people who are going to make $15 an hour, who are ambulatory, who are only economically marginalized, who are not disabled, who don't
Could we
have.
stop the time again, please? Maggie, multiple times now, you've been told your testimony needs to be relevant to the item at hand.
I am. I'm
Please, your time's been stopped, and
I-
I'm speaking now. This is one piece of our overall strategy to address affordable housing and homelessness. It has nothing to do with shelters. It's not money that we can spend on shelters. So
I don't want you
need to
spending money
keep
on shelters.
your
I want you
testimony
spending money on permanent
relevant
supportive
to
housing.
this item. And speaking to the last gentleman who was up here, if you want to better understand these items, our whole agenda is published the Friday before City Council. You can click through the links and read all the materials that are provided to us in our binders. You can contact our offices if you have any questions. And you can look on the Housing Bureau's website and you can see the current income guidelines that we use that are dictated by HUD. I agree that the city doesn't do a good enough job informing the public. I know that our website is hard to navigate, but these are two pretty simple things you can do. You can read our agenda starting Friday before council, and you can look at the information and resources on the Housing Bureau's website. Do you have testimony relevant to this item? Which
Yes,
is, are you for it or against it? And if so, why?
Okay, there's not enough affordable housing, and there's not enough permanent supportive housing, and we need to abolish shelters. So more of the same for affordable housing, because when you have these government contractors come in, they hire these temporary workers, and then they lay them off over and over again, and they can't pay their rent anymore.
Hey,
And then
Maggie, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move on.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I like the projects that I'm seeing here with Habitat Humanity. I think it's very well thought out. I especially like the larger size of the units that you're developing, townhouse style. One of the things that I guess I have a little bit of a confusion on is that when you develop a property like this and then you put in the construction financing, and then you're going to come in and do a partial separation from that construction financing, a partial release of the trustee security. How do you do that? Do you actually do like a condo plat on the whole facility itself, and then you plat that out individually on the construction financing? I don't know if that's been made clear yet. Because that's what a lot of people know in this room. You can go out and buy a 20-unit apartment building and then do a condo plat on it and sell those units out individually as condominiums, as individual units. So, but they're building this right now and then putting construction financing in place. So I assume you're working with the lender on that condo plat situation and separating it out with the lender. So I don't know if you can have a speaker come up and explain exactly how they do that on the new development, but it says it very clear here is that PHB intends to convert the construction loan into permanent affordability subsidies through partial release of its trustee security at the time to qualified home buyers. So my only other thing, the term on that qualified home buyers, I'm hoping there's a way also when people may not qualify or they'll be close, that maybe the city can step in and also be a guarantee to the construction loan financing and say that we'll guarantee that there'll be a payment made above what they can do at this time to get them into these
The
units.
Lightning, one of our cornerstone programs is a down payment assistance program.
Yes.
Which helps people get over that hurdle, which for a lot of people, and we've heard lots of testimony on this,
Yeah.
that becomes a big barrier. So the city does have a program which helps people with down payment assistance.
Because a gentleman came up here and was using kind of a $26,000 a year income basis, and what I'd like to see is that, can we do a guarantee above that income level from the city to the people that are offering the construction financing to put people into housing? And that's a small additional subsidy from the city. And I know where you're coming from on the down payment issue, but I'm talking the actual payment per month issue also throughout the years. And I noticed that they're giving a 10-year property tax exemption to certain qualified home buyers. I'd like to see that pushed to maybe 20 years for these buyers. And again, that comes back to negotiations with the city and the different places that we obtain the financing. So
Thank you.
Again, if maybe more clarity on that condominium type situation. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
We have one more person signed up, Diane Lynn.
Very good, come on up. Good morning. Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning. My name is Diane Lynn. I'm Executive Director of Proud Ground. It's wonderful to see you all, Mayor. members of the council. We work in partnership with Habitat for Humanity Portland Metro East on creating permanently affordable homeownership opportunities for low and moderate income families, as you all know. I'm here to emphasize the extraordinary collaboration and innovation that has occurred to really help make this project on Kilpatrick the first of several projects, as you know, that will put us on track to move towards the goals we're trying to achieve with this extraordinary effort in North and Northeast Portland. We've been working together as a team with PHB and the other agencies to match the families to these units. And along with several single-family homes in the community, we're starting that process more vigorously, and these units are obviously critical to that process. I'd like to emphasize for just a moment the impact that these projects will have into the future in these communities, because these units will be permanently affordable. Along with that, the families will build equity at the time, if and when they choose to sell. They can leave their units to their children into the future. If they choose to sell, our research is showing that in a 10-year window, a family can generate at 60% of median income, and that's about $45,000 a year for a family of 2 or 3, can generate up to $80,000 in 10 years' time. That can be a game changer into the future for families, and at the same time, we sell that unit again to the next income qualified family. That's the critical part of the investment that you are all supporting today in these kinds of projects. It's not just today's impact, it's going to make a difference well into the future. And these shared equity and sweat equity models really bring the community together to support these projects. I'm excited to hear about the Strong Family contribution to our community today, and we very much look forward to working with you on several other projects that are in the pipeline.
Diane, I had one question, and since you're here, and I think you can speak for Steve on this, we're all used to the sweat equity model that Habitat for Humanity has for detached single-family homes, where prospective homeowners and the families put in time as part of their eligibility for becoming first-time homeowners. How does that work with condos?
Condos are a little different, and I hate to speak for
Just in very general terms.
But very general terms, people put in their sweat equity hours on other projects. They
I
don't
see.
try to build the condo. That has to be done by professional team.
But there's still a sweat equety piece.
There is a
It's
sweat
just-
equity piece.
It's just elsewhere.
Absolutely, and it's
An
great.
exemption for elderly or disabled individuals?
Steve, I'm sure there is.
Yes, is the
I'm sure they
answer.
make
Okay, thanks.
accommodations for anyone
Okay,
to
very
meet the
good.
needs of the family.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for your partnership, Diane. Very good. That completes public testimony. Any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll, Keelan.
Hardesty?
I am so thrilled that today is a very good day here at City Hall. We are actually being very intentional about how we address this core issue of how people with limited income are able to live and thrive in the city of Portland. I wholeheartedly support this proposal. Of course, I wish it was 4 times the size and we had 20 times the number of people ready to have a home ownership. But, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I vote aye.
You Daly?
Well, I want to thank the Portland Housing Bureau and the members of the Northeast Oversight Committee. Thank you for bringing us some good news today. I'm very pleased to vote aye.
Fish?
Thanks, Steve Messinetti and Habitat, which has really been a fantastic partner for the city. I love the model. The last time I had a chance to join Habitat was in Cully, where we gave some keys to some new homeowners. Fast forward, my daughter and I went back on a Thanksgiving to deliver some flowers, and no one was home, but the intent was good. We just didn't coordinate it effectively. But love the model. And also, inexplicably, interest rates are coming down, which is weird because there was a prediction that interest rates were going to start going up as the Fed was tightening. But it, in relative terms, is not a bad time to place first-time homeowners and low-income families in a home, given the interest rate environment. But again, Steve Messinetti and Habitat are such great partners, so I'm very pleased to support this. Aye.
Wheeler?
So as the commissioner in charge of the Housing Bureau, I have to say this has been one of the more interesting projects that we've been working on in recent years. I think all of us understand that home ownership stabilizes neighborhoods, it stabilizes communities, and here, at least in the United States, passing on home ownership is still the best way to create intergenerational wealth. And so as we talk about some of the gaps that exist in this community, not only around housing, but also income inequality and wealth inequality, this is the type of strategy that can help address those issues. And I also just want to clarify, this is just one of the many steps that the city is taking to help close the gaps in terms of home ownership. This, as you have heard, has been the basis of a broad community partnership. And today we've heard from some of those partners. And I particularly want to thank the North-Northeast Oversight Committee. I agree with Commissioner Udaley, considering where we started a couple of years ago, where we are today is leaps and bounds beyond that. And I want to thank the committee members and Dr. Holt and others who worked so hard on that. The African American Alliance for Homeownership Collaborative, Habitat for Humanity, of course, who has always been a great partner to us here at City Hall, Proud Ground, and of course, the Portland Housing Center. Last but not least, I want to thank the Housing Bureau again, this following right on the heels of the Strong property acquisition, which is largely a play around anti-displacement, but also continues to dovetail with the North-Northeast strategy as well as the preference policy. These things combined start to become pieces of a bigger strategy that we should all be proud of. I'm very pleased with the work that's been done and what will be done in the future. And I always agree with those who come up here and say we should be concerned about architecture. I agree with that. And I have to say that from my personal perspective, architecture is somewhat of an art form. It's in the eyes of the beholder. I actually believe that the projects that we have done ribbon cuttings on of late have been outstanding from an architectural perspective. And those of us who went to the Blackburn Center ribbon cutting yesterday, frankly, it wasn't that amazing. I mean, just from an architectural perspective, it was amazing. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the work the Housing Bureau has done. I'm excited about our collaborations with the community, and I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 651, and just to give people a heads up, we're going to be cutting public testimony to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor.
651, authorize new construction financing in amount not to exceed $7,350,000 for the 106 Halsey Gateway Park project.
So, colleagues, this is part 3. This project comes as a result of a long, close working partnership with the Housing Bureau, Prosper Portland, and the community to add to the vibrancy and diversity of the Gateway District. This new development will ensure the new opportunity for low and middle income households to live and thrive in East Portland while adding much needed affordable commercial space to further the dreams of local Portland entrepreneurs. These 75 total units respond to the great need for affordable housing options in East Portland and further our commitment to the East Portland community, as well as taking meaningful steps to both prevent and mitigate displacement. Right up front, I want to thank the good folks at Human Solutions, Girding Edlin, and the Gateway community at large for their excellent participation and collaboration on this project. Director Callahan.
Good morning, Mayor and
Morning.
Commissioners. We're really pleased to be here today to take this final step to move this project into fruition. This really is the culmination of efforts from the entire Gateway community and the East Portland Action Plan, as well as a number of different city partners, our sister agency, Prosper Portland, the Housing Bureau, and of course the Parks Bureau for the beautiful park which this property will actually reside and be married as neighbors. And of course to Human Solutions and Girding Edlin for the dynamic new community asset that they are about to create. Just to give you a little overview of the project from the Housing Bureau's perspective, the project itself, as the mayor has said, will blend middle income and affordable rental housing. 52 units of affordable housing are being supported by the Portland Housing Bureau. 45 of these units will be available to families who make less than 60% of median income. That means a two-person household, for example, who makes approximately $42,000 a year. And 7 units will be available for families who make 30% or less than median family income. And that would be the same two-person household who makes $21,000 or less a year. And Prosper is supporting 23 middle-income units in addition to affordable commercial and office space. And I'd now like to turn it over to my colleague, Director Branham.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Kimberly Branham, Executive Director of Prosper Portland. And as a result of all the partnerships that Shannon and Mayor Wheeler mentioned, we are looking at a potentially unprecedented partnership and mix of uses, and we're delighted to have been able to participate. So we're supporting the 23 market rate units and approximately 11,000 square feet of office space for Human Solutions, as well as just over 11,000 square feet of affordable commercial space on the ground floor. The first example of our affordable commercial space is in Alberta Commons. And so we're having a grand opening on July 20th. Would encourage everyone to be there. But what you'll see is a really dynamic mix of local businesses who will benefit from the proximity to the park and will provide critical services. Later today, the Prosper Portland Board of Commissioners will consider a complimentary investment of $9.5 million of tax increment finance to support these priorities. And as was referenced, the project actually began back in 2008 when Portland Parks and Recreation and Prosper Portland bought this property, this 4-acre site, together with the goal of building a world-class park anchored with a mixed-use retail and housing development. So as you know, in 2018, the park opened, and Portland Bureau of Transportation has recently completed some beautiful streetscape and safety improvements along Halsey Weidler. Prosper Portland has supported 14 businesses along the corridor. So we feel like together with the community, we are working to deliver on community priorities and supporting Gateway to be a family-friendly, inclusive, and vibrant place to work. We appreciate that.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Jill Sherman with Girding Eadlin, here to answer any specific questions you may have about the project, and would just like to note a couple things. This has been something that we've been working on along with the city now for probably 4 or 5 years, so it's been a journey. There have been twists and turns, and our partnership with the city to sort of react to those and figure out how to move forward productively has really been critical, and is why we're able to be here today asking for your support in the financing for the project. I'll also say this is one of the more complicated projects I've worked on from a financing and capital stack perspective, and I work on some pretty complicated projects. So another thing that really couldn't happen without everybody sort of pulling together. And then one interesting thing I wanted to note is this project is unique in that the units, whether they're affordable or middle income, will be distributed throughout the residential floors. So we brought additional complexity on to ourselves, if you will, by rather than saying, one floor would be affordable and one floor would be middle income, we actually are going unit by unit, which has created additional complexity, but was something that Human Solutions and everybody felt really strongly about to really do mixed income housing the way mixed income housing should be done. Thank you.
Commissioner Daly.
I'm curious. I mean, that sounds like the ideal to me. It's truly, multi-income housing. I certainly wouldn't want us to be supporting the creation of poor floors or poor entrances, to use some really negative terminology. But what are the complexities you're referring to?
So the affordable housing is supported, as you know, by low-income housing tax credits.
Mm-hmm.
The office component, retail component, and middle-income housing are supported, not the retail, but the office and the middle-income housing are supported by new market tax credits. Those two financing tools cannot be in the same ownership structure, so we have had to create condominium structure so that we can separate the financing. And that's why you often see separate buildings or separate floors.
Well, I'm very relieved to hear it is about the financing and not about people who make different incomes coexisting side by side, which, as I'm sure you know, some people don't want to have to do.
If I could respond real
Yeah.
briefly, Andy Miller from Human Solutions, just on that piece, we were pretty insistent that the model would be fully integrated. We've been partnering and studying and learning from a national nonprofit called Purpose Built Communities, which is really based in Atlanta, Georgia, redeveloped the area of East Lake in a way that we think Portland could learn a lot of lessons from, and we've brought them to Portland and many staff from Portland bureaus down to Atlanta to learn. They've really developed a healthy model of mixed income housing and are very insistent that the units be identical, that even the services provided to residents are identical. And so the boundaries between the different types of units exist only in the financing and legal structure, not in the actual operation of the project.
Great, I'm really happy to hear that.
Jill, I have a question. This particular development is going to be very conspicuous because it's next to a park. And in some earlier pictures, I wasn't clear about what choices you had settled on in terms of materials for the surface, and whether those materials for the surface were consistent with some of the other building types in that area and fit. So could you address that?
Sure. So facing the park, it's primarily metal panel. It's like a gray but not shiny panel that will really reflect and change with different sunlight and shadow. We actually initially had a very bright color and a bright, vibrant red that was not preferred by the Gateway neighborhood, and so we worked with them and provided a bunch of different options, and we ended up with this kind of gray. And then we do have some brick facing Halsey, and we also kept the two-story part of the project on Halsey so that it would be more compatible with the streetscape as you go along Halsey.
So there is some brick on Halsey?
Yes.
This is, everybody has their own view on this, and this is just one person's view. But for example, I find the Vera, which is going up, and I drive by regularly as I go to OHSU, I find the choice of materials to make the building unduly cold. It feels very cold and unapproachable because of the use of metal and the treatment. And I think whenever possible, obviously we want these buildings to be inviting and we want them to be consistent with the surrounding environment. So I'm very pleased to hear you've chosen brick on Halsey. Andy, any?
Sure. Andy Miller, Executive Director of Human Solutions. Our mission is to counter the forces that give rise to homelessness and poverty. We do that work primarily in East Portland and East Multnomah County, and we've been doing it for 30 years. Very pleased to be here today in support of this project. As others have described, it's a long time coming. If there's a lesson here, I think it's sometimes doing the right thing is often doing the more complex thing. And this project, I think, is testimony to the notion that we need to push through those complexities sometimes to get to the right place. And so the mix of uses and financing in this project is highly complex, but we're reaching a major milestone today, assuming the vote in support from this body and from Prosper Portland later today, and we hope to be under construction in September. With respect to the design and the program, we had enormous community involvement from the Gateway neighborhood, homeowners, tenants, EPAP, the Gateway Area Business Association, the neighborhood associations, all came to community forums and pushed and pulled and worked. I want to give a shout out to Dave Oddie at Hulst, who designed an absolutely beautiful building in response to a lot of different levels of input in different directions, but we landed on something that I think everybody agrees is going to be an enormous compliment to the neighborhood. And I really want to emphasize that this isn't just a housing project, it's a neighborhood project. It's built alongside a park. It is an inclusive and equitable form of housing in that it has mixed income units. It includes our services that will be on site to support some of maybe the more invisible members of the Gateway neighborhood whose needs are not always being met as that neighborhood it receives investment and improves. So we think that's an important balancing piece to the economic development that the retail will provide. It includes many firsts for Human Solutions. First partnership with Girding Edlin, which was absolutely invaluable to us and to the project. Their expertise in this realm really, I think, helped us get through some of the hardest problem solving that we had to do on the project. It is our first development on a park. I think parks and housing go together like peanut butter and jelly, and I see that being eaten in the park by residents. But I think the notion that the immediate access to green space, to recreation activities and programming in the park is a huge benefit to the housing residents. But I also think the 24/7 eyes on the park from the residents adds to the degree of community ownership of that park space and community support. So we're thrilled with this project. It was a journey, but we're getting to the end of it, or at least the start of the next phase of it. So we look forward to inviting you all to the groundbreaking August, September, sometime therein. Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
An observation and then a question. I, having served, having had the honor of serving as the housing commissioner a number of years ago, and I'm thinking specifically about Gray's Landing. I approach affordable housing a little differently than some because what I have come to appreciate is that they are almost impossible projects to pencil out and to do. People say, why does it take time? Why do you need a Girding Edlin? Why do you need an extra partner? Well, we can cite chapter and verse of well-intentioned projects around the city where they just didn't have the capacity at the front end and didn't get favorable responses to RFPs and other things because they didn't have the horsepower. And then the complexity of how you do tax credits. And we have made the development of affordable housing in this country inordinately complicated. And when you bring tax credits into the equation, a market-based system, you got to bring lawyers and accountants and all kinds of people. And so I operate from the assumption that it is almost impossible to do these projects correctly. So it's a cause for great celebration when all the pieces come together. And I just don't know a community that is more proficient at getting to yes despite all the obstacles, because the obstacles are extraordinary. The question I wanted to ask is a mundane one. There's a plaza in front of the building. Who will ultimately be responsible for activating the plaza? Will it be you, Andy? Will it be Prosper Portland, or will it be Parks, or some combination?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. So Parks will program, as you know, there is a space for a staff person and some materials that is on the park, and so there's a staff person regularly there. So they will be responsible for programming the park and the plaza. We have had great conversations with the Parks Bureau to make sure that the retailers, to the extent possible, can also help to activate and sort of spill into the park, and also not make sure that they're at cross purposes with what the parks envision on the plaza. So we are committed to activating it and to doing so in a collaborative way. But ultimately, Parks is responsible for the portion that they will own in perpetuity.
And Kimberly, in terms of the retail space, is this building covered by the overall strategy we have of affordable commercial space and looking for opportunities for new entrepreneurs to get a foothold?
Absolutely. So we've learned a lot from our pilots, which is the intent of pilots. And so we will begin looking for tenants almost as soon as these actions take place. And we will be bringing these, the retail space, which Prosper, unlike the other two properties, actually Prosper will be the owner of the retail space. So we're not subleasing it. We are going to maintain ownership of it. So we are going to bring it to Warm Shell, and we will be looking for small businesses that can benefit from being along the corridor, as well as businesses that can provide services. Childcare comes to mind, or grocery grocery kinds of services. So we'll be working with a community group as well as Human Solutions and our partners to make sure that that's done well.
But can I get a commitment from you
Yes.
that under no circumstances will there be a liquor store?
Absolutely, that's not an allowed use. Yes, that is a commitment.
It is anomalous to me that in some of our legacy projects, we had liquor stores in buildings with people in recovery, and it seems like we were working at cross purposes.
Yes, we will not have that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. As you know, I love this project, and it's been a long time coming. Just for the sake of public disclosure, I am the vice chair of the Human Solutions Board, so I just want to make sure that people know that I'm speaking in that context as well as the city commissioner. But Kimberly, my question is really for you, and the question is about the retail space. Does Prosper have to make a return on its investment in that space?
So we are anticipating, and my staff person here can speak in more detail, but we are anticipating that we are subsidizing the space in a permanent way, but not in entirety. So similar to affordable housing, where there is some rent that is anticipated to service the financing, we are anticipating some rents coming from the leases to repay the financing. But there is a portion that is permanently subsidized and allows us to keep those rents at affordable levels.
Because I thank you for that response. As you know, I continue to advocate with you, and so now I'm going to do it in public, that it would be great to have meeting space in East Portland.
Okay.
There is a lack of space for community members to be able to come together and actually be able to work cooperatively, to be able to create opportunity. And I think that this is an ideal space for us to be able to make that happen. And so I really want to work with you and my other colleagues to help us figure out how do we make some space available specifically for nonprofits and for grassroots community groups. As you know, there are a lot of new groups starting in East Portland that don't even have budgets, right? But they have vision and they have energy and they want to do good things in the community they live in. And I would hate to miss this opportunity with this new beautiful space connected to this great beautiful park to not create space for community members to be able to utilize it and participate.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner Hardesty, I can speak to that. The office portion that exists above the retail will be occupied by Human Solutions, and our board meetings will take place there. So we'll have a board room and adjacent meeting rooms that we're trying to design as flex space with the idea that we can open it up off hours when we're not using it to the community for community meetings or community events. There's also a resident services room that I believe opens up out onto the park that can accommodate some indoor-outdoor events with some shared uses between the housing and the park with some indoor-outdoor space. So we haven't finalized all the details there, but we've been thinking a lot and are well aware of the need for a lack of good gathering space in East Portland and in particular in Gateway.
Yes, yeah. But I want to remind you, Andy, I know how quickly Human Solutions gets booked up solid.
We do.
182nd and Burnside is my case in point, right? So this is an opportunity for us to think about it before, right? We actually open the doors. So I appreciate you saying that, but I also know how booked Human Solutions gets. So thank
Good
you.
observation. We do. We're booked in Rockwood all the time.
Very good. Thanks to all of you. Appreciate it. Public testimony.
We've had 4 people sign up.
2 minutes each, please. Name
Mayor,
for
can
the
I just
record.
remind
Commissioner
everyone
Fish.
who's testifying, this project has already been given the green light. Today, we are talking about the financing piece, new construction financing, but the project has already been approved by the council.
We have Curtis Faith, Jan Connett, and Lightning, and the 4th person is Maggie.
And feel free to decline if you have already said your piece.
I just want to know how many of the units are going to be for supportive housing? How many units are there? How big is the land? How many are going to be truly for supportive housing? Because
I'd be happy to try to answer that for you, Maggie, if you'd like. So Human Solutions has support staff in their building, and they will be in that building working with all the tenants, helping them to get connected to whatever it is they need. So this will be one of the buildings that you won't have to worry about whether or not people have access to what they need when they need it. I can guarantee that for you.
Okay.
So what else you got?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I do approve of any of the construction financing that is needed. The project looks very good. I like the fact, as you have stated, it's on a park, and that's, everything looks real good on this. Human Solutions and Girding and Edlin they're going to do an outstanding project here. They have the experience and the projects in the past to justify that. So I don't have any concerns on this. One of the things I guess that I was kind of wondering here is that this is TIF financing, and I was wondering on these other projects we've kind of seen today is that does the affordable housing bond come into play on any of these projects, or they could possibly, is that correct? So, because I haven't heard anything on the affordable housing bond and the money sitting there to maybe be used on these type of projects. So maybe someone could explain that to me on this, because I understand it's the TIF financing. And, but other than that, like I say, I really like the project, and everything appears good. And like I say, I signed up to maybe speak on 3 items that I thought would be condensed to one. I think the mayor knew that also. So anyway, everything
Lightning,
looks good.
this project for a long time has had a carve-out within the urban renewal district for this building.
Yes.
So that's why TIF is being used. And as you
Point
know,
taken.
when you do a bond project or something else, you have to go through an RFP
Right.
and a competitive solicitation. So there was a prior carve-out for this project.
Okay, already prior on that,
Yes.
okay. And again, just real fast, I really like the location and putting the money out near Halsey in the 106 area. So again, just from my position, absolutely approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
I
morning.
just don't think there are enough units of supportive housing that are being,
Thank you.
Thank you.
you know.
I just had one.
Can I have your name for the record, sir?
Curtis Faith. I had a comment regarding, I was trying to figure out how this related to the other gateway project that had just sort of initially been proposed, at least as a floated idea a few months back.
Not related.
Near the Gateway Center.
That's a private development, and they have not come back for their financing request. This is with a nonprofit partner. They're totally unrelated.
But I mean, just in terms of geography, are we talking blocks away? Or are we talking, I understand that from a project perspective.
They're within a
separate.
half a mile of each other.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does that complete public testimony?
Jeanne Conant signed up, but I don't believe she's here.
Jan, are you here anywhere? Last chance, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
It is rare in this building that I get to see these kind of projects from a whole lot of different sides. My work with Human Solutions over the last 8 years, my work with the East Portland Action Plan over the last 9 years, just makes it absolutely fabulous to be sitting in this space today to be able to support this project. This is a vital project that will add lots of fabulous, beautiful homes for people who live in East Portland. This is an opportunity to actually build a model that I think and hope will be duplicated. I like the idea of having market rate and low-income affordable housing units interconnected in a way that is seamless. And this is going to be one of those great projects. And I'm thrilled to vote aye. Even though I wished, again, that we had like a lot more, but we do have limited resources to invest, but I'm thrilled to vote aye for this one.
E. Daly.
So it goes without saying, as the commissioner in charge of both Prosper Portland and the Housing Bureau, I'm thrilled with this project. And I know a lot of people worked tirelessly on it. I particularly want to thank the community that worked in close collaboration with the city and all of our partners in this. And again, this is one more step towards creating the community that we want, making sure that it is an inclusive community the way we want it to be, making sure that we have a good mix of resources. particularly in this case in the Gateway community, and that we're being smart as a city institution by leveraging the public investments we've already made, in this particular case, in the park. And so I just think this is a win, 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 win. And
Mayor?
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you called me.
No, I'm sorry, I called you Daley, but
The mayor is so excited about this project.
I am.
He thinks he can carry the vote with 2 votes.
I vote aye. Commissioner Fish.
No, Mayor, I would defer to you, Mayor, and I'll go out
ahead.
of sequence. You should take a bow on
I
this.
just did. I just voted aye. Go ahead.
Okay, Andy Miller.
What is happening right now?
The excitement was just so
Okay.
I heard my name. I'm sorry.
Andy Miller took over Human Solutions from a legendary housing figure in our community and has built on that strong foundation and has continued to do great work. And Andy, of course, is a veteran of the Portland Housing Bureau and other leadership positions in our community. So congratulations to Andy and to Human Solutions. Parks, Prosper Portland, and the Portland Housing Bureau, that's a pretty good team. Throw in Girding Eadlin, it's unbeatable. So we're delighted to be part of that. And while Commissioner Fritz is in England and isn't here to take a bow, this really started with a park and a vision. And we can all be grateful that there was such a run-up in systems development charges because of all the development in our community that we were able to put money into this park. And I forget whether it's over a 5-year period or a little longer, but I saw a number recently that as much as $70 million has been invested in East Portland parks, in part thanks to the bond and to systems development charges. That's a heck of a down payment. I'm pleased to vote aye.
you Daley?
Well, I'm sorry if I messed everything up by not being here when my name was called. I'll just quickly thank the Housing Bureau, Human Solutions, Prosper Portland Parks, and the community for their involvement and input. And it sounds like also thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. And while I'm at it, I think I'll just thank PBOT because I'm pretty sure they've done a bunch of safety improvements out there too. I vote aye. Mayor?
That's a wrap. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We are now on the regular agenda, folks.
Woo.
I hope you brought your lunches. Item 667.
Amend acquisition of public art code to expand eligible uses of the 2% funds, explicitly prioritize underserved communities, and clarify city accountability.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a substitute to move, and the council's been provided with the substitute. I would ask someone to move it.
I move the substitute.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
I didn't think there was a vote today.
Got an annotated version.
We're just putting the substitute on
Oh,
the
okay,
table.
sorry.
table.
Okay, yeah.
Call
Sorry
the
about
roll.
that.
Hardesty.
Aye.
You Daley?
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, substitutes on the table. Good
So,
morning.
Mayor and colleagues, following our first presentation on these proposed changes to the 2% for Art program, we elected to pause for a couple of weeks to have further conversations with our partners at the Regional Arts and Council, or RAC. That conversation was fruitful, and today we are offering a substitute ordinance that we believe is better. The changes we incorporated are modest and do not affect the key components of the update. We have distributed a red line version of the ordinance to each of you. We've also touched base with each office, and the council clerk has copies available to anyone who wants an additional copy. I want to thank Madison Cario, the new executive director of RAC, and Commissioner Udaley's office, and particularly Polly, for their tremendous partnership during this process. We have staff here to answer any questions as they arise, but we think the substitute is pretty straightforward. Jamie, did I miss anything?
No, sir, that's everything.
Why don't you introduce the panel, just so people know who's...
Absolutely. I'm Jamie Dunphy. I'm Senior Policy Director with Commissioner Fish's office. To my right is Tracy Schreiber, also with Commissioner Fish's office. And to my left is Pollyann Faith Burge with the office of Commissioner Udaley. We're available for any questions, but the majority of the amendments to this red line version are clarifying and do not change the core of what we're trying to ultimately accomplish.
We think it strengthens it. We appreciate the partnership with RAC, and council colleagues will be coming back to council later this summer, early this fall, with an update on all the work we've done since the audit and since the adoption of the arts affordability agenda. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the amount of work that we've been able to do in a collaborative way.
Okay, well, colleagues, I will not be here for the final vote on this item, so I hope you will humor me for a minute or two, because I'd like to give my closing remarks.
When is the final vote?
It's on the 24th, I think. They bumped it up till next week.
No, next week we don't have council.
Next week is the 17th, the 24th.
The following week, okay.
I will be.
The 24th. Oh, sorry.
Nope.
Yeah, this is on the 10th.
Okay,
This feels
sorry, I'm a
right.
week ahead. You're right,
Yes.
the 24th,
Yeah,
sorry.
following
24th. 24th.
All
I won't be
right.
here either, by the way. so.
Okay. Here it goes. I wrote this when we heard it the first time around. As a longtime and active member of the arts community, I can personally attest to how essential affordable space is to our arts and culture community. I count among my friends artists, designers, musicians, filmmakers, writers, performers, makers, and creative entrepreneurs whose work spans the past 6 decades in Portland. And this diverse group of individuals have had one thing in common, one thing absolutely essential to developing their craft and becoming successful working artists: affordable space to live, create, exhibit, perform, and sell their work. Anyone who knows my work knows my unwavering commitment to protecting and stabilizing renters in their homes. While this may be a single issue, it is by no means a single-minded pursuit. Lack of affordable residential and commercial space has far-reaching effects beyond the ability of an individual struggling to pay the rent. It's terrible for our neighborhoods, our communities, our schools, as well as tourism and our local economy. It also makes it exponentially harder to preserve, sustain, and grow our glorious arts and culture community. The result is a less vibrant, less prosperous, less diverse, and less visionary arts and culture landscape. As Commissioner Fish noted previously, the inner core of the city is already relatively arts-rich, which is why we're making these changes. But it's not artist-rich, as artists are among the tens of thousands of people who have been displaced to the margins of our city and beyond. That's not a Portland that I or many Portlanders want to live in. The code change is one small but meaningful step towards mitigating those impacts, and I'd also like to highlight the fact that it is another item on our aspirational wish list known as the Arts Affordability Plan that we have now accomplished. So April Baer, if you're listening, please take note and upgrade our grade on that item. This change gives us greater flexibility in how we use the 2% for Arts Fund by decoupling the dollars from specific sites, allowing us to invest in creative space, both fixed and mobile, as well as artist residencies, with an explicit prioritization of underserved neighborhoods and communities. It's not going to make a big visible splash at the outset, but over time it will enrich the arts and culture landscape more equitably across the whole city. So thank you to the Fish crew, Tracy Schreiber, Jamie Dunphy, and Sonia Schmansky for their all-hands-on-deck approach and for their collaboration with our office. I also want to thank David Huff, the City Arts Manager, and RAC staff, including Madison Cario, Jeff Hawthorne, and Kristen Calhoun. Last but not least, thanks to my wonderful Arts and Culture Policy Director, Polly-Ann Burge. And I believe, do we move to the next item?
No, we take testimony on the substitute.
I thought we would take it at the vote, but yeah. Is there public testimony on this item?
We've had 2 people sign up, Jan, Conant, and Maggie. I don't know that either one of them are here.
All right, Ann, Maggie, not present. Seeing nothing, we will be, please read the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
668, grant a franchise to Exo Communications Services LLC for telecommunications services and facilities for a period of 10 years.
Okay, so since this is an unexpected moment for me as not the actual president of the council and working without a script because the mayor is
But it's
left
good news is it's a second reading.
the room. Yes, okay. I was just killing a little time while I got to this agenda. Could you please call the roll?
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Wheeler, oh, no, I'm sorry, Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the ordinance has passed. Please read the next item.
669, authorize a contract for utility bill printing, mailing, and presentment for a term of 5 years for $4.6 million.
Okay, we have staff here to present, and I will let you introduce yourselves.
Good morning. Scott Schneider from Procurement Services.
I'm Kathy Cook with the Water Bureau.
Before you, you have the procurement report for the recommendation of the award of a contract for utility bill printing, mailing, and presentment for a not-to-exceed amount of $4,600,000 and an initial term of 5 years. On October 26, 2018, Procurement Services advertised RFP number 985, and on November 26th, 8 proposals were received. All 8 proposals were deemed responsive to the requirements of the solicitation and were reviewed by an evaluation committee. The city issued a notice of intent to award the contract to InfoSend on February 11th, 2019, and no protests were received. InfoSend has a current City of Portland business tax account and is in compliance with the city's contracting requirements. InfoSend is not a COBID certified, minority-owned, women-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned, or emerging small business. There are no subcontractors on this project. Based on the expected spend over the next 5 years, the confidence level for this procurement is high. If council has any questions.
Yeah, what was the original estimate, when we went into this contract,
6.5.
what was the amount that we originally, medium confidence, thought this would cost us?
The enabling ordinance was 7.5.
7.5?
Correct.
And so it is, a tremendous accomplishment that that the bidding came in so far below our estimates. Would either one of you care to just opine as to why the winning bid is so far below our original estimate?
When we originally went into it, we didn't know what to expect as far as pricing, so we hadn't gone out to see what that would be. So we took our actual budget of what we had budget authority for, because we do it in-house now, and just straight across said that's what our estimate is. Now that we've actually gone out, we are far more familiar with what their actual cost will be.
But this is really a terrific news that it came in so far below. Kathy, I'm tempted to offer a friendly amendment that would require you to extend your stay with the city for 10 years to implement this. Do you have any problem with that?
Do I get a say?
You do. It has to be a friendly amendment.
Okay.
No, good work.
We'll see.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. I also was going to comment on the fact that it came in about $2 million less than what I saw as the original bid amount, and I want to compliment that. I want to ask questions about how do we diversify these kind of contracts so that we can ensure that we're creating opportunities for women and people of color business owners. I know that you said this particular contractor is not registered as a minority or woman or emerging small business. And I know that we have aspirations, but what do we do proactively to work with businesses that we want to build long-term relationships with to ensure that we are actually expanding opportunity?
So some of the things that we can do, and which we do on especially some of our larger solicitations, is to do active outreach to potential vendors. The COBID directory is a good place for us to start because we can see who's currently certified, and it's organized by industry type, so you can go and see who's active in this particular area. We also, for Professional services contracts do have some greater flexibility to contract directly with certified firms. We have some code changes that I think we have a work session coming up on to discuss with council. We're looking to possibly extend that to contracts that fall under the goods and services code, so not just the professional services, but single trades and other just more ordinary goods and services that haven't had that same level of support in the past.
None of the vendors that applied were co-bid, but for this particular company, the composition of their staff is 38% female and 72% people of color. For their mid-managers, they have 22% female and 100% people of color, so it is definitely a company who's interested in that as well.
Well, that gives me a lot of hope, because they weren't certified in that manner. My assumption was that it was a majority business that really didn't have the kind of data that you're talking about. Thank you. That helps me a lot. Appreciate that. Thank you. All my questions.
Thank you.
Anybody signed up?
Public testimony, please.
We didn't put out a sign-up sheet for this one.
Okay, any further discussion on this item? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you.
Wait, I'm sorry, is this a report?
Report, correct.
Oh, this is a report.
I move the report.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're on 69 already?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the report? Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
All right, report's adopted. We've had a request, colleagues, without any objection, I'd like to move 676 next, please. Please read item 676.
Authorize $75,000 total in grant funds for the Constructing Civic Dialogues Grant Program in the Office of Community and Civic Life.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, this ordinance authorizes the Office of Community and Civic Life to add Portland United Against Hate as a partner to the Constructing Civic Dialogues program. Here today, we have Angela Prevedelli from Civic Life and Rabbi Deborah Kolodny for the presentation. Rabbi, you are a trooper. Welcome back.
Post-surgery.
Post-surgery.
I'm bionic.
You are
2 new
bionic.
hips.
Yes.
It's good to have you back.
Congratulations, and thank you for your patience. Welcome.
Thank you so much for accommodating the request to move this early.
course.
Really appreciate it. Hello, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this grant recommendation to you today. My name is Angela Prevedelli. I am a grants coordinator at the Office of Community and Civic Life. For today's presentation, I will begin by providing an overview of the proposed grant agreement, and then Rabbi Deb Kolodny will present on Portland United Against Hate's work more broadly, providing updates on their accomplishments and their vision moving forward. This ordinance asks for approval on a $75,000 grant agreement so that Portland United Against Hate can join the cohort of grantees providing trainings through the Constructing Civic Dialogue Grants Program. On the grant agreement that's included in Exhibit A, you'll see that Southeast Uplift is listed as the signatory. They're acting as the fiscal sponsor for this grant agreement. Civic Life launched the CCD, Constructing Civic Dialogue, grant program with City Council approval in January of this year. The first 6 months of the CCD workshops and trainings have been very successful. There's been great interest and demand for the workshops, and they often fill to capacity very quickly. After the initial launch, Civic Life reviewed the program offerings, reflected on feedback that we've been receiving from our communities, and we identified a gap. Portland's communities are experiencing an increase in hate violence. The impact of this violence is profound, with our most vulnerable communities experiencing the greatest impact. Recognizing the need for resources to identify, address, and hopefully prevent hate violence, we asked PUA, Portland United Against Hate, to apply for the CCD grant program. Civic Life reviewed and accepted their proposal, and today we ask for your approval. Through this grant agreement, PUA will provide 5 types of trainings, each one approaching hate violence from a distinct perspective. PUA plans to partner with the city's district coalition offices to provide these capacity building trainings. The coalition offices have expressed a great amount of excitement and anticipation for these workshops as they see firsthand the impact that hate violence is having in their communities. Each workshop will be offered 4 times for a total of 20 workshops. PUA coalition organizations, each specializing in a particular topic, will provide those workshops. The power of having PUA as part of our grantee cohort for CCD is that their coalition is diverse and comprised of organizations that have up to 15 years of experience in delivering these trainings. These workshops include Hate and the Landscape of Our City, which will be provided by the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, Transgender in America, provided by Lewis and Clark College's Transactive Gender Project, Islamophobia, provided by the Muslim Educational Trust, Trauma-Informed Care for Targeted and Impacted Communities, provided by Lutheran Community Services Northwest, and Interrupting Hate in Public Spaces, provided by As the Spirit Moves Us. You can read more details about the services, their methods of data collection, expected outcomes in Exhibit A, Attachment A in your packets. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Deb to talk about PUA's accomplishments more broadly, and then after that we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the honor and privilege of speaking before you today, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. We're continuing a conversation that began in November 2016 when our nation and our city experienced a collective wake-up call demanding that we say no to hate. It's been almost 3 years since the ugly white nationalist underbelly of this nation and this city has been emboldened. Our work was hard enough before that election, and then bam. We had to ramp up to the nonstop hypervigilance, resistance, and persistence necessary to confront tyranny, hate, white nationalism, Christian hegemony, federal government criminality, and the most disgustingly greedy version of gangster capitalism, again, at the federal level, ever. Because of Oregon's history as a white state, the work here in Portland was some of the hardest in the country. So PUA formed and PUA visioned and PUA embarked on our mission to give trauma-informed support to targeted communities, provide tools, skills, and knowledge to thwart hate before it harms, and of course collect data by creating a safe, anonymous tool that people would actually use so we could scope out the breadth and depth of the problem and find solutions tailored to our specific reality. Back in January, we gave a report that offered up the information that our data tracking tool got 138 responses in 2018 during a very small beta test, and that dwarfed official hate incident data collected by the police. We learned that 54% of those incidents were perpetrated against the Latinx population. 13% of them occurred targeting Black, African, African American, Gambian, and Somali community members. We learned that we are not safe in the streets and we're not safe at home. Perpetrators included neighbors and landlords, property managers, supervisors, and the general public. In the first 6 months of 2019, we collected data from 65 respondents to date. And this data was collected across the city. We've begun to push out and promote the tool so that it's gone beyond the original grantee organizations. Latinx individuals still comprise the largest target group, though reduced to 35.4%. And in a massive increase, 28% of targeted individuals identified as gender fluid, gender nonconforming, non-binary, and/or transgender. And that's no surprise to those of us who've been paying attention. The percentage of those targeted who are African, Black, Somali, and Gambian individuals increased twofold to 26%. And just as an aside, 37% of all of those incidents were also reported to the police. And so that we keep this real and we keep this current, I just want to say that just yesterday, a white nationalist with a knife assaulted activists who were protesting ICE in what has been described as a horrifying attack. Since our reporting isn't due yet for this particular grant cycle, we can't update our stats on trainings and support, so I'll just repeat that for 2018, more than 2,667 people were trained in 152 trainings that addressed hate incidents, know your rights, trauma-informed support, and more. 9,429 people in 11 languages were also supported with outreach engagement and support trauma-informed care. But of course, our work goes beyond statistics. We heard your feedback that we needed to expand who was at the PUA table, and we responded. This spring, we did a massive outreach, and we doubled the size of the PUA Steering Committee, and we're bringing on key municipal agencies like PBOT, TriMet, the Office of Crime Prevention, the Office of Equity and Human Rights, as well as representation from the county, 3 additional neighborhood coalitions, and key community organizations serving targeted communities like the Guardian Angels, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and Greater Portland Trans Unity. We're also manifesting our intention to end our total dependence on city funding. Our fiscal sponsor agreement with Southeast Uplift launched July 1st, and we have many donations pending, including one for $5,000. With data in the pipeline, we're excited to expand our work beyond training, trauma-informed care, and data collection infrastructure. We're poised to begin evaluating that data and determining which policies can help the city get upstream and create a hate and hostility-free city. In August, we're going to begin to evaluate where we can throw our collective clout to strengthen the work of potential partners. For example, can we support the student leaders at Cleveland High School who are inundated, deluged with hate incidents? Pictures of swastikas and lynchings, one week after the next. I think there was a blackface cake at a bake sale. Is there a role for PUA to play with Portland's street response as it supports the houseless population, which is so heavily targeted by hate? As we expand into policy and campaign work, our training has moved beyond individual skill building and empowerment to institutional policy making. For example, I recently trained PBOT in interrupting hate in public spaces, not just so staff can feel personally empowered, but so they can establish policies and protocols to empower the collective to deploy someone to center the target, somebody to de-escalate the perpetrator, and then to follow through on whatever happened after the incident takes place. And also to help us push people to report so we get the best data possible. We're also thrilled to be at the table with your staff to partner around the training that you decided, that you so wisely decided was necessary on white supremacy and white nationalism. I want to close with just how much optimism this civic dialogue grant offers for our collective work. It's the perfect example of how the city can find ongoing funding to manifest its obligation to keep the city safe, livable, and welcoming. Suk Ri is to be applauded for her ingenuity and vision. I hope you share my optimism that together we can find other mechanisms to fully fund PUA through ongoing funding. Together, let's answer the questions: what city granting mechanisms support trauma-informed care for targeted populations, community-driven data collection and advocacy and representation for targeted populations? And then follow that inquiry up with, how can we secure part of that funding for the organizations that are doing the work of PUA, so we're not continually in the cycle of asking for special appropriations? As you probably know, between the city special appropriation grant and this civic dialogue grant, we have $175,000 less funding than in our first cycle, but our work is by no means shrinking. So how can we tap into the resources that we already have and build on the wisdom of Suk Ri to make this work sustainable? We are the humans of Portland who constitute the buffer between the nightmare that has emerged in America in the past 3 years and the tragedy that America can become. We owe it to those who perished at the hands of white nationalists to find sustainable means for supporting this work. We owe it to Larnell Bruce Jr., a 19-year-old black man killed on August 10th, 2016. We owe it to Ricky Best and Talazine Mirdin Namkai Mach, active bystanders killed on the Max. We owe it to Titi Gully Jr., a 31-year-old black homeless trans woman found hanging from a tree 6 weeks ago. We owe it to those civil rights activists who were assaulted yesterday on the streets of Portland. But even more so, we owe it to the hundreds of those subjected to hate every year in our city. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring, and thank you for acting.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. Public testimony. Commissioner Hardesty, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Rabbi, for your very powerful testimony. I want to applaud POA because when POA came to meet with my office, I told them that it was not appropriate to be reliant on public funding, that they needed to become independent, that they needed to figure out who they were representing. And it's been incredible watching the growth that's taken place since that conversation. And I want to be clear, it's not that I'm not 100% in supportive of the education and the work that's being done, but it's just not appropriate for the city to continue to do these one-time funding, and create expectations that we have no ability to live up to. And so I just want to applaud the fact that you heard loud and clear. And Rabbi, as you know, I've attended your training, and I know that you've done some incredible trainings because of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I just want you to know that my office is available to work with POA and with the Office of Civic and Community Life to help you identify other opportunities to get people to invest in this ongoing work. I would love to say that a change of federal leadership would mean that hate would disappear. We know better than that because it was here all along. It was just covered up with pretty words and in somebody's basement, right? It's always been here. It's part of Oregon's DNA. And unless we have an ongoing group that's really committed to actually giving people the tools to stand up to that hate, even with the change in federal leadership, we'll just go back to the same old, pretending that hate is not part of our DNA. People of color, people who've been marginalized, low-income people know that every single day we confront hate, and we confront it in very different ways. And so I just want to applaud the work that you're doing. I agree. I think Suk has been really visionary about and very intentional about how we're moving this work forward. And thank you for not being dependent on the city to actually fund what is absolutely a community effort. And it must be funded and supported by a broader community. So thank you.
Thank you. You reminded me that there's actually a Meyer Memorial Grant RFP that's just come out that we've spoken with them about. That's perfectly situated for the work we're doing, so we're hopeful about that.
Excellent. Need a letter of support, let me know.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Very good. Public testimony.
The people who signed up have left.
Can you call their names just to make sure?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jeanne, Conant, and Maggie.
All right, very good. With that, and then unless there's any further questions, we'll call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Daly.
I am really pleased and proud of the work that PUA has done. I inherited Civic Life and the fledgling PUA project when I walked into this building, and it was a big lift to make it all come together. And while I am happy to continue looking for ways that the city can support your work, I also understand and support PUA becoming an independent entity, because I recognize that we play really different roles as a community-led advocacy group and government, but I look forward to continuing to work together. I'm also a big fan of the Constructing Civic Dialogues program, although I am concerned that the name is a little academic and dry, and the public may not be able to surmise what it's really about. And it's really about bringing community members together to talk about really challenging subjects and get to the root of what, as you mentioned, is often written off as interpersonal conflict, but is really about race, culture, class, religion. So I'm pleased about that work, and I'd like to continue promoting it because I want to make sure as many people are showing up and know what it's about as possible. We know that we need to provide the community with tools and resources to be able to engage and learn from each other across difficult issues. When we don't, we see the effects manifest in disputes among neighbors in our public forums, like today perhaps, and more. So these upstream approaches not only save us time and resources in the long run, but are better for the health and safety of our communities. I think of PUA and to a certain extent, I think of PUA as community self-defense. And the work that Constructing Civic Dialogues is doing is very supportive of those efforts. I want to note that combating white supremacy and the rise of alt-right violence is a citywide priority. Although obviously we can't make policies and laws that target one particular group, we can certainly speak out against hate and against white supremacy. This is not going to be addressed through any singular effort, which is why I'm proud to see Civic Life embed this goal into their existing programming, the goal of combating white supremacy. And I want to take this opportunity to encourage other bureaus to consider ways that they can contribute to these efforts. Finally, a few thank yous. Again, thank you, Rabbi Kolodny, for joining us today. I don't think I would have your fortitude to come down to City Hall and sit through hours of council session. I apologize for the delay. And thank you, Portland United Against Hate, for continuing your great work. And congratulations on inspiring New York City to launch an almost identical program. That is one side effect of this job that I wasn't aware of, but I really love seeing other cities adopt our policies and programs. We need more inspiration like that. So I'm proud to continue to support your work. Thank you, Angela Previdelli, and all Civic Life staff who will be supporting this program. I vote aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I want to build on the good comments that Commissioner Daly just made. She mentioned race, culture, class, and religion as being flashpoints. And I think she got it exactly correctly. And the reason I'm sort of musing over it now is when I think about really what's at the heart of all of this. From my personal perspective, I believe it's change and the fear that change evokes. And so I'm really excited for the dialogues that you've described. I think part of the problem we're having as a nation, as a culture, is our inability to communicate with each other. And as our nation becomes politically and in many regards philosophically more sharply divided, those opportunities to sit down and say, hey, what is it? What is actually going on? What is the basis of your activities or your action? Those are difficult conversations to have in this day and age, but I think that's part of what's missing from this overall equation, is just interacting with people who do not agree with your perspective or come at it from a different perspective and find out what the basis of it is. And as mayor, I find myself more often than I probably care to in the middle of this conversation about managing dynamic change and the fear that it evokes and the reactions that it evokes. And oftentimes for a small percentage of people, that reaction is either hateful speech or hateful action or violence. And so I support the work that Portland United Against Hate is doing. It's very, very difficult work. I acknowledge, as my colleagues just have, that it's not the whole solution. It's an important component of it, and without Portland United Against Hate, we don't get anywhere, but there are many other aspects to this that we have to collectively be willing to address as a community. And some of those conversations going forward, I think, are going to be challenging for many. But I'm really glad, Commissioner Daly, that you're bringing this forward. I'm glad that the council is being supportive of it. We have to show the rest of this increasingly divided nation that we can bring people together and that we can get back on the same page. And in the meanwhile, the training that you have conducted Rabbi and all the work that Portland United Against Hate is. And it's very practical, it's pragmatic, it gives people the information they need in a time when there's a lot of misinformation out there. So that's a long way of saying I'm really pleased with the work that you're doing, and the contributions we're making are relatively small compared to the upside here. So thank you for all you do. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Thanks, Commissioners.
Mayor, can I just jump into time management?
Commissioner Fish?
If I add up all the time on things that we have left, it's about an hour.
Not going to happen. We're
And
gonna be faster.
I'm taking a break at 1, so I just
Okay,
want
then
to,
let's
fair
keep-
warning.
Well, the good news is I've got a couple of items here, and Shannon Callahan and I collectively are time management experts. So let's start with the labor issue 670, and then
Ratify,
we'll get to the housing.
ratify a letter of agreement between the American Federation of State, City, and Municipal Employees, Local 189-3, to merge with AFSCME, Local 189.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Labor Relations Coordinator Jamal Anthony. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you
Good
guys?
afternoon, sorry.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I heard what you guys just said, so I'll be expeditious.
Thank you.
So in 2017, the AFSCME represented members of Portland Housing Bureau elected to become members of the District Council of Trades Unions. And per the Public Employees Collective Bargaining Agreement, the city and the union had to meet to discuss the terms of the merger into the larger union. The city met with the union in May, and we were able to reach a tentative agreement which outlines all of the provisions of the DCTU contract, which will and will not apply to these employees for the duration of the DCTU contract, which expires June 30th of 2020. So that's what the ordinance is before you today.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Any public testimony on this item, Keelan?
Jan, Connor, and Maggie, but they've left.
Jan and Maggie are gone. Call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Ordinance adopted.
Thank you.
671, this is a second reading, but I'm going to do something with it in a minute. Go ahead.
Authorize a borrowing of not more than $52,900,000 in anticipation of the Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Fund levy for FY 2019-20.
Colleagues, I'm going to do something slightly unusual. This is a second reading, but I'm also going to ask that we add an emergency clause to this through amendment. The emergency language will read as follows. A, Section 2, the council declares that an emergency exists to eliminate the potential of a negative fire and police and disability retirement fund balance that may occur under circumstances the borrowing experiences an unforeseen delay. Therefore, the ordinance shall be in full force and effect after its passage by the council. I'm moving that. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Hardesty. Please call the roll on the amendment.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The amendment is adopted. Now to the second reading. This is a second reading. We've already heard the presentation and public testimony. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll on the ordinance as amended.
Hardesty?
I just wanted to say, when I first saw this, I was like, what? Why are we borrowing this much money? But I am happy to say that I am very comfortable with what it is we're doing and the reasons behind what we're doing. And so I am an aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Item 672.
Amend Joint Office of Homeless Services intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County to authorize FY 1920 budget allocation to the Joint Office of Homeless Services.
Very good. And we have Shannon Callahan, the Portland Housing Bureau Director, and Mark Jolin from the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Mark and I are here to answer any questions you may have about the IGA in front of you. This is the third year that we have made an amendment to the IGA. We are making an amendment to reflect and effectuate the budget that Council approved in June. So essentially what we're doing is making sure that we can freely flow money between the Housing Bureau, the city, and Multnomah County's Joint Office of Homeless Services. So with that, I would see if Mark wanted to say anything, and otherwise we're just here to answer questions.
Only that there are no other
changes to the IGA. It's truly just the addition of the new budget amounts as an attachment to the IGA.
Very good. Any further discussion? Any public testimony on this item, Keelan?
Yes. We've had 6 people sign up.
Very good. 2 minutes each, please.
Curtis Faith, Jeanne Conant, Joe Walsh. Doesn't look like. Lightning, Diana, and Maggie.
Too much of our time up front, and they had to leave.
All right, very good. Going once, going twice. Sold. Sorry. Oh, there you are. Sorry. I apologize. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners.
Could you put your name in the record?
Oh, yes, I apologize. My name is Diana.
Thanks,
and I think that this is really great. I feel that homelessness is a very, very serious issue. I was homeless for 2 years due to displacement, and so to see advocacy by the city to combat that is very, very much important. So I'm for this, and that's really all I have to say today.
Thanks, Diana. Commissioner Hardesty.
Diana, I just want to thank you for keep coming back. I just love the fact that you have this curiosity about you and you ask good questions and you're very mindful and thoughtful. I hope you're a model for other people who come and testify here about the issues that are in front of the City Council. So I just want to thank you for coming back. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Thank you. With that, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Daly.
Aye.
Fish.
I want to thank Mark Jolin for his excellent work. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 673, please.
Authorize intergovernmental agreement with Prosper Portland in support of the ongoing implementation of housing functions at the City of Portland Housing Bureau and economic opportunity functions at Prosper Portland.
Shannon, are you covering this one? Very good. Shannon Callahan, Director of the Portland Housing Bureau.
Good afternoon, once again, Shannon Callahan. This is similarly to the Joint Office IGA, which you just voted on, a intergovernmental agreement that effectuates the transfer of funds between the Housing Bureau and Prosper Portland. Primarily, we are a recipient from Prosper Portland of TIF dollars for affordable housing development, and then we also transfer some of our federal dollars, namely CDBG, for workforce development efforts at Prosper Portland. These are also, these were what you approved in the budget process as well. So this is, both of these items are 2 things we do on an annual basis following your adoption of the budget.
Yep, very good. Thank you. Any further questions of Director Callahan? Any public testimony on this item?
We've had 4 people sign up, Jeanne Conant, Joe Walsh, Lightning, and Maggie. I don't believe they're
I
here.
don't see any of them here. Very good. Please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Daly.
Aye.
Fish.
Once upon a time, this was actually a controversial matter on our agenda. That was before we took the housing functions out of PDC, created a freestanding housing bureau, and then settled the question about using CDBG funding for economic development. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. And
677.
you're going to have to read 674 and we'll move it.
Amend Public Improvements Code to permit the attachment of wireless facilities on poles.
Colleagues, this has been rescheduled to July 31st, 2019 during the morning session, 9:30 a.m. Thank you. Next item, 675. This is also going to be moved.
Amend contract with TriMet for $6,571,781 to provide for enhanced upkeep and security of the Portland Transit Mall and the original light rail transit loop segment of First Avenue, Morrison, and Yamhill Streets.
Colleagues, this is also being rescheduled to July 31st, 2019 at 9:30 a.m. Commissioner Hardesty?
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask for a courtesy that this be heard when I'm back in town the following week, because I think that this requires more conversation, since we're not talking about it today.
Commissioner Udaley, do you have thoughts on that?
We're talking about 675?
Yeah.
I just know the summer schedule is very challenging, and I'm assuming that there is some timeliness, so can we just proceed and I'll ask staff to see if there's another workable time? Because I'll be out in August and, yeah.
Commissioner, if we reschedule it to the 31st, then we can work with the clerk's office to find a
Great.
time that.
Yeah, we can always move it later, but if we should hold the space now.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We've already done 676, 677, please.
Remove the designation of 5 trees as City of Portland heritage trees.
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor and colleagues, heritage trees are trees that have been formally recognized by the City Council. An important and essential part of the program is that no tree on private property can be designated without the consent of the property owner. Today's item is related to a case from 1999 where the trees were designated without the proper private property owner consent. Now, let's be clear, we cherish our heritage trees, and we are very reluctant to propose to remove a tree from the list. But the city has clear rules that we must follow, and the alternative to council action is that it is likely, according to our attorneys, that a court will reverse whatever we do, and we will incur attorney fees, which is not something that I recommend lightly. It is absolutely clear that the rules were not followed in this case, and therefore we're asking for this unusual action of council to delist 5 heritage trees. With us today are Portland Parks and Recreation Director Adina Long, Deputy City Attorney Molly Washington, and Urban Forestry Analyst Brian Lando, and they're here to give us a very brief presentation. Director Long.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Director.
Heritage trees are trees that have been formally recognized by City Council for their unique size, age, historical, or horticultural significance. Heritage trees are given the highest level of protection in city code. City code requires documented permission of the property owner at the time of designation for a private property tree to become a heritage tree. In 1999, 5 American sycamore trees at 230 Southwest 2nd Avenue were designated by council as heritage trees in the public right-of-way. The current property owner informed the city that these trees were on private property at the time of council action, and there is no record of property owner consent. This claim was researched and confirmed. Per city code, the Urban Forestry Commission is responsible for making formal recommendations to City Council on the listing and delisting of heritage trees. The Urban Forestry Commission is comprised of 11 community members who volunteer their time to advise the city on matters pertaining to trees, including regulations, budget, policies, and plans. The Urban Forestry Commission declined to recommend the heritage tree designation be removed from these trees and referred this decision to City Council. A statement to this effect from the chair of the Urban Forestry Commission has been submitted to City Council. Because no property owner consent was obtained prior to the listing of these trees in 1999, the heritage tree designation was applied erroneously. We ask City Council to remove the heritage tree designation.
One other point, if I could just make from my colleagues, the developer does plan to build housing at this site, and this will be an inclusionary housing project. So we will be getting some affordable housing in a very important part of our city. Molly, do you have anything to add?
No, just that this is the appropriate process to go through to remove this designation.
Thank you, Council. And
Commissioner Hursty.
Thank you. I chuckled a bit when we have a commission that punts to the city council, right? But the buck does stop with us, and I appreciate the due diligence that was done in notifying our office and having this conversation, because I think somebody noticed that I would be, what do you mean you're removing these trees? So I appreciate your proactive approach, and you're absolutely right, this is the right place to make that decision. It'd be good if the commission would have actually thought about that as well. Do we know how many other trees are on the list that in fact have not received the permission of the property owner? And how many times will we be doing this in the near future?
Well, I believe it's just those trees that are in question for this particular property.
Well, I know for this property,
Right.
but I mean, is this going to be a trend that we're going to be asked over and over and over
No,
again?
this is an unusual set of circumstances.
Excellent.
But in fairness, this predates everybody at council. Okay. So this is a 1999 decision. A property owner is free to raise this issue in the future as we do development, but there was no question in this instance that there was no documentation establishing consent, and so it's a relatively straightforward case.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few questions that you may or may not be able to answer. This is an unfortunate situation. Never like to see mature trees cut down. I don't think that we have legal grounds to deny it. However, my concern centers around mitigating the loss of the tree and the fee paid in lieu. So first, I want to get clear on what we're talking about. We're talking about 3 trees that are street trees and 1 that is on private property.
It's 4 trees.
Right.
And then a 5th.
Oh, so there's 5. Okay, so 4 street trees and 1 on private property. Because it just says, so the 4 trees refer to the street trees.
That's correct.
Okay. So the one that's on the private property will not have to be replaced because of the zoning doesn't require it. And the street trees will have to be replaced, correct? So there will be 4 trees cut down and 4 trees planted.
Actually, my name is Brian Landau, analyst with Urban Forestry. The mitigation for street trees that are removed in development is actually two for 1. So there would be 8 trees that had to be replanted or a fee paid in lieu.
So I guess that's my question. I think clearly there's not enough room for 8 trees on this strip. So would they could plant 4 more trees somewhere else, or they could pay a fee in lieu?
Yeah, so they would most likely pay the fee in lieu because of the space available, which is $1,125 per tree.
I'm all for requiring developers to replace more trees than they're taking down, but in the case of the street trees, it seems a little bit odd. I'll think about that later. So my final question is this payment in lieu. Obviously, this doesn't remotely cover the true value of a mature tree over its lifetime. And I know that's not something that we can really fix today, but it's something that I would like to address for the future, because I think we still make it too easy and too affordable for developers to cut trees down and get out of mitigation. And we just, I think, contracted with PSU for a report that showed that how important trees and just any green planting in the city is for eliminating hot spots throughout the city. So I would want all of our policies to be supporting, at the very least, protecting what we have, if not increasing what we have.
Commissioner Daly, just one qualification in this particular case. It is city code that requires that the lot line be moved to a place that makes it impossible for the trees, in this instance, to remain. So this is not a developer targeting these trees.
Right.
Our own design guidelines and our zoning code require that the lot line be moved forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Any public testimony on this item?
Yes, Jan Conant, Lightning, and Bruce Nelson. Maggie, Greg S. Everhart. And then after that will be Connor Stava and Christy White.
My name is Bruce Nelson. I'm a longtime resident of the Cully neighborhood and a longtime volunteer involved with tree activities in the Portland metropolitan area. The procedure that was used to delist heritage trees has not been followed. There's supposed to be public notice. There's supposed to be a fair amount of time That procedure has not been followed. Perhaps there are grounds for it, but I'd just like to point that out. Urban Forestry Commission got 48 hours notice of this being brought before it, and they had 54 pages of documents submitted by the applicant to review in that time. These are volunteers on the Urban Forestry Commission. That's unfortunate that that happened. I'd like to switch gears now to ask you if perhaps there is another way to go about doing this. I want to encourage all of you to try to help the owner of this property find a way that the owner can win and that Portland can win. And by that I mean the owner is going to realize greater economic benefits from this property if there are some sort of landmark trees on the property. The value and the rental values of storefront property will increase. The sales in those storefront properties would increase. That can be a win for Portland. That can be a win for the owner of the property. I would hope that you could encourage the owner, figure out a way where the residents that are going to live in these, quote, affordable units, there's a listing of 151 units. I don't know if that means residential units that are proposed or not. We gain the benefits from trees that are with us every day. We don't necessarily go to a park to see those benefits. Where we work, where we live, we need the benefits of those trees. Is that my 3 minutes already?
Two, thank you.
What?
2 minutes.
Okay, is that all I get?
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, all right, good luck. Thanks,
Thank you,
and
sir.
good luck with this.
We appreciate your being here. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm actually taking my hat off as Urban Forestry Commissioner and as the Chair of the Heritage Tree Committee, and I'm really crossing my fingers. We've got a technical problem. My presentation was pictures because I wanted to show you and basically ask for help. I know Mayor Wheeler has both planning and sustainability and development services. I was going to show you 5 examples of heritage trees around which buildings have been built. 2 of them are actually 6 stories. 1 of them has housing above retail. They actually, in that case, separated it into 2 buildings and have a minor setback by the tree, which is perfect for kind of the street life, tables, dining, and so forth. In both cases, I am sure that the big buildings, that the units that are next to these trees will be the premier ones. I don't know if you can change the rent depending on the amenity when you look out on a tree. But if this doesn't work, I don't know whether this is considered an emergency or not. But I have brought a petition. We literally learned of this 2 days ago. And fortunately, we had the showings of Canopy Stories. And in those movies, the Monday showing had the story of saving the Eastmoreland giant sequoias. Well, we got a picture at least. And then the one last night showed the Corbett oak. And so there were a lot of people there that are tree activists as well as film aficionados. And they really were willing to sign, their hope that if this was found to be a legal problem, that the city could work with this development team, perhaps encourage them. It was on the petition, but they would need an arborist, they need a landscape architect.
First, can I just say something?
Sure.
Thank you for coming today. I apologize for the technology glitch. This is the second or third that we've had. And Mayor, once and for all, can we fix the technology glitches?
I will pass that on to the auditor and the council clerk.
Well,
and
I'm
I will work with
willing
them
to
see what we
entertain a
can do.
motion for additional resources so that we can have a system that works particularly when members of the public bring PowerPoints. But the other thing I just want to say to our friend from the and time is up, and from the Urban Forestry Commission, without the consent of the property owner, we have nothing to enforce.
That's right.
And we don't disagree about values. We don't disagree about the significance of heritage trees. We don't disagree about the value of heritage trees to new development and to park development, other things. There is a single legal issue here, which is whether we have the consent of the property owner at the time the designation was made. Absent that consent, we go to court and we lose. We have nothing to enforce. So I don't want this to become I don't want the impression to be left that somehow this council is indifferent to the fate of heritage trees. There is a very narrow question, and no one has provided any evidence to the contrary that there was no consent. And absent consent, we have no enforceable right against that tree. The default is the code that allows for the removal of the tree, which our code requires as part of this development, and then the replacement through mitigation. So I want that on the record, because you are often here as the chair of of the Heritage Tree Subcommittee. It's one of my favorite annual exercises when we designate heritage trees, but for some reason the city screwed up on this one. And without the consent, we have nothing to enforce, and I just want to be clear about that.
Right, and so if we frankly were hoping for a miracle, there are actually people that came too late to sign up that actually also want to testify. I know you've run out of time, but, you know, it's sort of a de facto heritage tree status. And you'll hear from the attorneys last, but those plaques have been on the trees. The landowners never questioned it and complained it
Okay, so
until
you're
now.
raising a question of adverse possession or some concept in the law, and we have a world-class legal department that advises us, and that's not a legal basis that we can assert. So when you said earlier that it would take a miracle, it would take a miracle, because the developer, in this instance, the property owner, is well within his rights because the approval was never secured. This occurred well before you and I were in leadership positions. So let's be clear, and we cannot retroactively tag a property owner with a requirement that the city failed to follow its own guidelines.
Right.
Let's be very clear about that.
Right, but I wanted to show the council, as well as any public that's watching, that there are successful developments around large heritage trees
So
with this kind of building.
Keelan has found the right keys, so here we are. Why don't you take a minute and walk us through it?
I'll go back to the beginning.
Okay, great.
So I've handed over the petition signatures. It was a mistake. The committee at the time felt that the sidewalk, and usually there's about 2 feet behind it, is in the right-of-way. But I want you to see these trees because it's very clear they're going to be removed. There was a room on the petition for comments. Some of them actually were quite fun. Most of them are basically save the trees. It's interesting that this diagram is presented because this shows sort of the prescriptive route. 1 foot out from the center of the tree for every inch of diameter at breast height. There is an alternative. It actually takes an arborist and you figure out where the roots are. And you can have a very different, conceivably much smaller root protection zone. But you actually have to get the expertise and take the time to do it. I'll skip that one. You guys approved it earlier this year. This is a landmark in my life. You can see that this tree is actually above grade of the road, the sidewalk, and the building's finished floor. And it'll give you some of the dimensions there. It's been that way for years and tolerates it. This project up in North Portland is still under construction. They dug 2 floors deep to do underground parking. And I've got a second set of pictures just to show you how the units that are next to this tree and sort of how close this tree is. It's actually in the public right-of-way next to a sidewalk. It was designated a heritage tree after they had approval, and Urban Forestry didn't enforce any of the regulations they would have done afterwards. This tree is surviving. This landowner felt it was really important and valuable to their property to preserve this tree. And that's where we are hoping development services could look at all the kind of inducements and flexibilities. You don't have to build to the 0 lot line if you have some reasons not to. And that's what it would take to save 1 or 2 of these trees. This tree's up in Northwest. I actually watched this through construction, but I couldn't find my photographs. Again, a very deep pit. Nick actually probably goes by this tree. It's across from Cinnamon 21, absolute landmark on that street. And again, I think there would be real premium prices as well as a business opportunity on the street. And then finally, of course, the famous beach at Portland State, where both the tree and the building are better together than they would have been separately. So thank you for the extra time. I appreciate
bet.
the
Thank you.
difficult position you're in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
But there were some people that didn't get to sign up, so I don't know what the process.
We're going to lose.
We're going to lose a quorum really
Yeah.
soon.
If
We have to
you're
have a
here, if you
lunch
want to
break.
make a quick point, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say
Name for the
something.
record,
My
please.
name's Connor. I'm
Thanks.
just here to, as a concerned citizen, I don't have any necessarily skin in the game in that neighborhood. I come from the east side of town, at one of the most polluted areas in the Montevilla near 84 and Halsey. I shook Joanne Miss Hardesty's hand out there last year at this time. You were in Montevilla at the Stark neighborhood with a booth running for the council. That's very specific time in July. If you noticed out there, there wasn't a lot of people. It was 108 degrees out there during the day, and one of the things is that there's no trees on that street.
That's right.
There's no trees on that street. And I ask, what are we doing? I mean, this is a possibility that we have, to have some sort of benefit in this area. These are old trees, something that we don't have in our neighborhood. And I just wish that the council would give a little bit more advanced notice for projects like this. I look at the painting up here and I see, I'm not sure how to read this painting. I'm sure you guys know the history of it, but it's, for reading it from left to right in a traditional way, it's moving the city back into the forest. And in the foreground, there's trees right there. I mean, what's the importance? And I think we need to think about that moving forward.
Thank you, appreciate it. Colleagues, any further?
Oh, there's one other person who signed up, Christy White.
Oh, come on up, Christie.
White, I don't believe she's here. Oh, okay.
Hi, thank you. I will be quick. It's Christy White. I represent the property owner in this case, and I just say that we concur with the testimony and facts offered by the city attorney and the city forester before the UFC that's now reflected in the ordinance. We concur that the city code is clear, that there's no evidence of consent and consent was required. And just emphasize a few things that have come up here. Commissioner Fish mentioned this is an inclusionary housing project, and what's great about it is it's one that's in the downtown core and is going to actually integrate the units in the building itself. And with this designation removed, I'd also respond, we still have to comply with Title 11 for tree removal and tree replacement, so there still will be trees along the right-of-way. And this building also intends to have a green roof, which will be helpful in the heat sink. And then, of course, the hottest spot is a surface parking lot, which will be going away on this site and replaced with something that is more advantageous in that regard. So with that, I know you're in a hurry to get out at 1 o'clock, and I'm available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion?
Mayor, because
Commissioner
of the
Fish.
unsettled schedule that we have, I would move that we put an emergency clause on 677.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Udaly. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Daly,
I've already put my concerns on the record. I'm kind of regrettably supporting this, but would just want to encourage anyone facing this kind of decision to really get creative and try to work around existing mature trees, because although they'll be replaced, they will, these trees will take years, if not decades, to reach the size and impact of the trees that are being removed. I vote aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. The amendment is on the table to the main motion as amended. Please call the roll. And then I need you for one other item.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Hardesty. Hardesty,
It'll be fast.
Aye.
Udaly,
It's just become a Udaly tradition to give closing remarks on the amendment before the actual final vote, so
For the
y'all
mayor
heard
to
me.
speak first, right?
And I vote aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. Ordinance is adopted as amended. Colleagues, we have three very quick items here on the consent. The first requires four of us to be present. Read 653, please.
pay bodily injury claim of Michelle Longtain in the sum of $125,000 resulting from a motor vehicle collision involving the Portland Bureau of Environmental
pulled it?
Services. Joe Walsh.
He's gone. Any testimony? Seeing none, call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. 654, please.
Assess property, I'm sorry, 664, is that?
Yeah.
654.
664.
Yeah, 664.
I thought, oh, so 654 was not pulled?
Nope.
No.
It was not.
Okay, 664 was pulled?
Yes.
Very good. Go for it.
Amend city code to update oath of office requirements.
Any testimony on this item?
Here's the auditor.
Who pulled it?
Madam Auditor?
I pulled it. I had
Oh,
a question about this.
Very good.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. The Auditor's Office is proposing housekeeping changes to update the oath of office requirements set forth in Chapter 3.74 of the City Code and related requirements included in Code Sections 3.20, 190, and 3.20.240. Here's some history. The sections included in Code Chapter 3.74 were last amended in 1995 or 2007. Section 3.20190 was last amended in 1991, and Section 3.20240 was last amended in 1973. The effort to update these code provisions was underway when I took office in 2015. At that time, Ben Walters from the City Attorney's Office was working with Sue Parsons from the Council Clerk's Office and other Auditor's Office staff to develop proposed revisions. This effort stalled when Ben Walters retired, but was revised earlier this year when a deputy city attorney brought the issue of inconsistent oath code language to our attention. Current Auditor's Office staff work with Ben Walters' initial draft revisions to develop the proposed code changes that are before you today, with helpful input from the City Attorney's Office. Please note that the proposal includes changes to Code Sections 3.20.190 and 3.202.40, which are part of the Police Bureau's code and address oaths of office. We forwarded draft changes to the Police Bureau and city attorneys for the Police Bureau, who reviewed and approved the changes and made further revisions to better reflect current terminology and practices. Please also note that the code updates that are proposed today are housekeeping changes intended to address inconsistencies, clarify oath administration and timing requirements, and eliminate gender-specific and other outdated terms. The Auditor's Office was asked yesterday why this legislation does not eliminate some additional outdated terms. For example, in Section 3.74.010, we proposed replacing the gendered and outdated term substitute policeman with reserve officers, even though the Police Bureau does not currently use reserve officers. The term reserve officer is the term that is currently used in several other sections of code, and the proposed revised language merely retains the requirement that such officers, if they were used, would be required to take an oath of office. We were also asked yesterday about Code Section 3.74010, which requires private police officers to take an oath. This is original code language that does not appear to have ever been amended. The term private police officer was not flagged for deletion in 2015, and the Auditor's Office does not have enough information about its history to determine if it needs to be changed. If the Police Bureau has some context in which it uses private police officers, it would be consistent with the other categories of officers to require them to take an oath.
Commissioner Hardesty.
What's a private police officer?
I don't know.
Neither do I, so why would we want it in the code?
Because there are a landscape of things in the city that I don't know, and if there is some context in which the Police Bureau would use those, such as in a mutual aid situation, an earthquake, I just don't know where that comes from. And so no matter what they do, we would like them to take an oath if they're in use, just like the reserve officer code.
Now, I don't think that there's any situation where we would have private police officers, so it just doesn't make sense to me that if the goal is to clean up the language, that we would be leaving language that makes no sense. And so, in my mind, that is not a good reason to, just because it's in the code, that we should just leave it there. So my friendly amendment would be to take that out And if the auditor's office is not comfortable with that, then I would be a no vote. And it wouldn't pass, so. here we
I have
are.
no opinion on that.
Neither do I.
Okay, well, this is being brought by the auditor. She doesn't have an opinion. You do have an opinion. This is a non-emergency ordinance. I suggest over the course of the next week, we iron it out before we take the final vote. Is there any public testimony on this item? Seeing none, this is the first reading of the non-emergency ordinance. Moves to second reading. Next item, 665.
Amend Portland Policy Documents Code to update and clarify repository procedures.
This was pulled at the request of Commissioner Fritz. Is there any testimony? Seeing none, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading, and my belief is the last item is, we have one more, didn't we? Or am I mistaken?
I don't think so.
I believe we're done for this morning.
That's it. Okay.
Before you,
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you gavel us out, I just want to put on the record that I hope that we hold off on any conversations around police body cams while I'm on vacation for the next 3 weeks, because as you know, I want to be very involved in that conversation. So just wanted it on the record that I'm hopeful that we will have that conversation when I'm back in the country.
I'm not aware of the forward-looking council agenda for the subsequent week, but I will pass that on to the Police Bureau.
Thank you.
Very good. Without further ado, we are adjourned.